What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my one, my only, my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. We're taking a break from the Look Ahead train, which, quick reminder, go check out all of our Look Aheads. I think as we're recording this, we have 21 of 30 up. Every team gets like basically an hour most of the time. Some of them go 90 minutes. We go into the weeds on all of them. Check those out. If you haven't listened to us before, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. And the biggest way to help us get the name out there, aside from subscribing, is leave ratings and reviews. The reviews on Apple are still how a lot of people find us or how a lot of people make their decisions. So take 10 seconds out of your day to go write a review for us and give us those 5 stars across all platforms. But we're here to talk something very timely. We're going to do our offseason grades for the Western Conference now that training camps are opening up. This just feels like a good time to get to them. How are you doing, Grant?
I'm just so ready to give out some Fs. We were talking before we started recording, and we're going to be a little harsher, I think, collectively on the West than we were on the East. I don't know.
I did talk you into some additional Fs.
You did. But you look. This is a collaborative process. We have our individual grades, but I did need. Surprisingly, I needed to be talked down on a couple of teams I'm always negative about. So maybe I was overcompensating.
Now, before we get started, do you want to take, for anyone who didn't listen to the Eastern Conference grades, which are up, so go check those out, did you want to take us through like what we're trying to accomplish by handing out these grades?
Yeah, I'll try to be more succinct than I was on the East. I listened back to that, and that was too much talking. Basically, we start from a perspective of what is this team trying to do, and then based on it, hopefully we can establish that. If we can't, that's a problem. And then based on that, we decide how well they pursued that goal. Like, did the signings, trades, draft picks they made fall into step with what the goal is for this offseason and the team as a whole? Fair, right? Like that's the bottom line. And C is average. We have to throw that out there. It's not a bad grade. We will give plenty of bad grades. They'll be very clear which ones those are.
And the other thing we always like to remind everybody is we do try to look at relative to what's available. And so it's just to use like an Eastern Conference team. It's just the Knicks couldn't go out and just sign all the free agents they wanted because they have to worry about the aprons and all that. So if you don't have money to spend, we're factoring that into, whereas a team like the Jazz had way more flexibility than a team like, I don't know, who's the least flexible team in the Western Conference as we're recording this? They were some pretty flexible teams.
Phoenix.
Well, they were. They found a way to not be flexible. But the point is, and we do try to wait, like, what were the other scenarios out there? And so if you're going to go in and, let's say we slam the Suns because of their return on the Kevin Durant trade, we do have to get into, like, well, what would the alternative paths have been, should be the goal. I think that's everything. We're going to challenge ourselves again. We're going to go alphabetically by division because divisions matter. Would you say that divisions matter more in the NBA than any other sport?
It's so important, Dan. I don't even watch outside the Pacific Division, for example. I just believe it's inferior basketball.
We begin with the Dallas Mavericks. I can take us through their transaction log, Mr. Hughes. I think you started us off last time, so I'll start us off this time. The Dallas Mavericks, I don't know if anyone heard they drafted Cooper Flagg at number 1. They re-signed Kyrie Irving after he declined his player option to a 3-year, $118.5 million deal. That actually lowered his cap hit for this season from $46.3 million to $36.6 million. He has a 2027-2028 player option. That ends up being important because the Mavs were so unbelievably close, like, to the second apron, that they needed to end up waiving and stretching Olivier Maxence Prosper. They signed D'Lo to a 2-year, $11.7 million deal. That's the taxpayer MLE. It has a player option on year 2. Daniel Gafford got extended on a 3-year, $54.4 million deal. He's immediately eligible to be traded, and it runs through the 28-29 season. And sometimes I'll throw in what the average of the salary cap is because I think some of these guys give people sticker shock. It's about 10.4% on average of the salary cap. PJ Washington got a 4-year, $88.8 million extension that runs through 2029, 2030, and it's about an average of 12.4% of the salary cap. And as I said, they waived and stretched Olivier Maxence Prosper, and after that, they brought back Dante Exum on a minimum deal. Grant, do you think they made the right choice at number 1? No.
Yeah, they get a C for that, right? Like you were every team on earth would have taken Flagg there. It's cool that they lucked into that pick, but like, I don't know how you feel, but I just didn't. I almost don't even consider that. It's great for the franchise. It's an A+, but it's like we're not grading that. We're grading like decisions, I guess, and this wasn't a decision.
Well, here's the thing: is that you clearly don't understand the vision. is
I
that
don't
they
understand
had
the vision.
Nico Harrison had to will
Right.
the lottery victory into existence. And so don't we need to account for that as well, which would make this an A+++ move?
Yeah, no, I think maybe should we just move on? Just
Yeah.
A plus plus. So flag aside, I think you can go down the list of every transaction here that you mentioned, and they're all like good to very good. And with that's not to say there aren't risks. Like I think the Irving deal makes sense, but you're paying for a year of him not to play, and who knows what he's going to be when he comes back. I just think overall, though, still like that's a fair amount for him given where he is in his career. So fine there. Russell's a great deal. Like I don't think either of us are huge fans of his, but for this team that doesn't have Kyrie, like to get a starting-ish caliber ball handler for $12 million over 2 years, great. Gafford, great. Washington, both tradable numbers, I think. So this might seem like we're trending just toward an A, which is I don't think is I can't remember yours, but I didn't end up that high, and part of that is because, or a lot of that is because I'm not super sure what this team's goals are, and I also really don't like the overall build here, which is to say this is an enormous team that does not have ball handling like at all outside of Russell, and like it's cool to imagine supersized lineups where like Flag or PJ Washington is the two. But like the team doesn't make a ton of sense to me, and maybe that will change if they can trade. Well, Washington cannot be traded, but Gafford can. If they use these good contracts that they've signed to sort of remake the shape of the team from a positional standpoint. But I don't know that that's the plan. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's been very difficult to figure out what Dallas's plans are. Does that make sense? Like overall is where I have the issue, not on any one transaction in particular.
Right, and I think I would echo all of that because the Daniel Gafford extension is one I get hung up on to where it's like, did you need to do that? But I guess if you're worried about Derek Lively's health, or as you said, you did keep him trade eligible, and that's a deal. But like, I don't know if teams are tripping over themselves to acquire Daniel Gafford. He's one of the most efficient guys around the basket, but he's also on a team now where like he's one of those guys, and him and Derek Lively, like they need someone to get. Even Anthony Davis is someone who's best positioned when someone gets him the ball. Who is getting them the ball until Kyrie Irving comes back? And I think what I struggle with here is they didn't have a lot of flexibility coming in. I think like you could see that by the Kyrie Irving contract. Like they needed to restructure that to like make basically the D'Angelo Russell signing possible. Like without him, if he would have just picked up his player option, like they would have had to go through a bunch of other different machinations. My issue is, so we have to look and ask ourselves, what is the goal of this team? And they laid out their goal when they traded Luka Doncic to say, like, we're trying to contend for a title. And it's clear that they haven't viewed the addition of Cooper Flag as someone who is going to change that. And so I need to look at them through that bar and say, you have this massive hole on your roster right now, and you did nothing to fill it other than sign D'Lo to a mini-mid level. That's not, again, all the transactions. I would have done probably most of them. PJ Washington extension for sure, but they weren't linked in trades to like getting this other primary ball handler. And if you're going to say, well, we want Cooper Flag to develop that way, hey, great. I actually think that's a fantastic idea, but not for a team that fancies itself a contender. Right. And so that's where the process versus like the internal evaluation or the internal goal, it really doesn't quite align. And then even if you take that out of the equation, I just would have to echo everything else you say, is that this roster just doesn't make sense from a balance perspective. It skews very heavily towards size and defense. And you mentioned ball handling, about shooting on this team. Like there's just not a ton of that either.
No, and we haven't mentioned Klay Thompson. That's not an off-season thing, but like he obviously provides shooting, but then like he's not someone that you can use to guard anything other than like a 4 these days. And the whole roster is populated with guys that should be guarding 4s and 5s. So it may be difficult to get shooting on the floor in that respect and maintain the defense that you're trying. So again, it's just a fit thing. I don't know, but we're negative, I guess, overall, but as we'll see here, you want to jump to the grades unless you have anything else to add.
No, it sounded like we went from sounding like an A+ to like an F.
Right.
And we actually
you gave him a B, I gave him a B-. I think we're pretty much aligned on, if you itemize the whole thing, individually these transactions are all like pretty good. It's just together it produces a team that is maybe trying to win now, but also later, and isn't really positioning itself to be great in either of those respects. So it's just a kind of a global, like, I don't like shrug. Like, I don't know. What are you guys doing?
And the other thing too is just like if I were the Mavericks, and again the fact that they still got a B for me while factoring this in is like this is not what I would be doing. Like Cooper flag is the timeline. I would have stripped it down.
Trade Anthony Davis.
Yeah. So that's again that factors in, but they didn't make a bad move though. Like what would be your least favorite move from them of the offseason?
It might be Gafford. My least favorite move again would be like the one they didn't make, which is to get more ball handling or shooting, get more guards.
Do you want to take us through? Oof, man, this team, the Houston Rockets.
You took Dallas, so I'd have to read this one. So they signed Ime Udoka to a multi-year extension, well deserved there. Kind of turned things around. Big transaction, traded Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, and number 10, which became Kaman Malawach, and a 26th second rounder to Phoenix for Kevin Durant. That also included sending out the 59th pick and a 2031 second plus some cash. Extended Jabari Smith Jr. for 5 years and $122 million with no options on that deal. Signed Dorian Finney-Smith for 4 years at $52.7 million. Most of the non-tax mid-level went to that deal. Only 2 of those 4 years are guaranteed, though, so the full guarantee number is $26.1 million. They re-signed Steven Adams 3 years, $39. That declines year over year. They declined their team option on Fred VanVleet for $44.5 million, brought him back for 2 years at $50 with a player option for $26.27. They brought back Jeff Green, Jayshawn Tate, Aaron Holiday on minimums. They signed Josh Okogie to a minimum. They also brought back Clint Capella, old friend, 3 years, $21.1 million. That was technically rolled into the Kevin Durant trade, which got very complicated. They also traded Cam Whitmore to the Wizards for the Bulls' 26th second rounder, the Kings' 29 second. That morphed into a 3-teamer in which Mojave King, number 47, 2 years ago, was also moved. And they created a $3.5 million trade exception, which they can use to maybe replace Fred VanVleet. No, I don't know.
They can't because they're too close to going over the first apron.
Yeah, that was the real wrench in the works, the VanVleet injury. So, Dan, a very busy offseason, kind of like sprinkled in every kind of transaction you'd want, from extension to free agent signings to trades. What jumps out to you most here, or is it even possible to talk about an individual transaction without mentioning the like monkey wrench that is the VanVleet injury?
Yeah, and we'll have to dig deeper into the VanVleet injury in a second. But I think the Kevin Durant move, they were good enough to make it. And I don't think it was, even if you thought that Kevin Durant might want to leave after this season, I know the number 10 pick was in there, but I look at what they gave up. Like, I probably would have made that trade anyway. So that sticks out. But I think what stuck out, even before the VanVleet injury, is them really over-indexing on not point guards or ball handlers. And as a fan of Reed Shepherd, I thought that was okay. But now when you have the VanVleet injury and you're left with Aaron Holiday, or again, I really like Amen Thompson, but he's not like, the ball handling isn't like, if you need to slow down the offense in crunch time at any point and go up against the set, he's so fast it might not matter. So we're going to get more information on him, Reed Shepherd, Alperen Şengün. But it did stick out to me, and it was even when they made the Capella trade, it was, okay, so they want to play a lot of bigs, like even when Adams and Şengün aren't on the court together. And I think that you could have quibbled over, again, even before the VanVleet injury, like we needed to bring in Josh Okogie and Jeff Green. Like all those guys needed to come back. Like why not use a minimum on either someone who's more of a shooter or someone who, like a Malcolm Brogdon for this team right now, might have looked brilliant. So I found that stuff curious, but when you're looking at the value, like the extensions, what you gave Steven Adams, what you gave Jabari Smith Jr., the Dorian Finney-Smith deal is feels like kind of a steal. So I really like their offseason, but it's tough to square away now. Like, how do we divorce it from, okay, well, what happens now that Fred VanVleet is probably going to miss all of next year?
Yeah, I think you have to divorce it because like we can't be in the business of grading injuries that happen after all the transactions are over. And if you imagine VanVleet is healthy, I think I'm surprised you weren't even more positive about it. But like they set it up so Reed Shepherd is the backup point guard. Like that's just what you're looking at, and then you trust your tertiary ball handling, I guess you'd say, to some combination of Thompson and Şengün, who can run some stuff, not a point guard, obviously, but you can run some things through him. And then Aaron Holiday is like your fourth or fifth ball handling option. like I think that's fine. And probably I think it serves the need that this team had to like put Shepherd in a position where he's going to play. Now, he really is in a position where he's going to play, but I think it was a positive that they didn't go find another Aaron Holiday type just as like extra insurance, because I want Reed Shepherd to play. I don't know if I want him to play as much as he's going to have to this year, but I do think that should have been a priority of like, let's not get more stuff in the way of him than we have to. So I don't view going into the season with even with VanVleet, what you might say limited point guard options. Like I think I think honestly I would have been fine doing the same thing. And then the rest of these deals, like I love the Jabari Smith deal. I'm probably too high on him, but I think that's a great rate for someone that, you know, maybe he's never going to be able to dribble, but I think he's going to make threes. I think he's going to be able to play center. That's just like, that feels below market to me for what he can be. So overall, yeah, this was a phenomenal offseason. The price was so right for Durant. Whatever happens, like that's just a price you pay.
To be clear, I meant it more. The post, and we're gonna have to talk about VanVleet in a second. I was talking about it more from a shooting perspective, because that would be a way to obviate some of the concerns about the ball handling now. But I do agree with you, because in my head I'm like, well, Brogdon can kind of play both guard positions, but one, is he healthy, and two, they extended him, so you hope that they're on the same page. But like, was this about we're taking as many clubs out of Ime Udoka's bag as possible so that Reed Shepherd does have to play? And that's that's kind of a bug, but it's also a feature of their offseason. Look, I think we should just talk about this now. So before we give our grades, let's talk about the Fred VanVleet injury. I want your thoughts on it, because you don't think this team is like, you think they're going to be fine for the most part.
I think maybe it's being a little contrarian, but like I really, from the moment the injury happened, I thought it was the reactions seemed hyperbolic to me, of like, oh, they're screwed, they're not contenders anymore. It's like, well, we thought they were like a fringy contender, or at least I did. Maybe that was the problem, is I wasn't 100%.
You thought they were a play-in team?
Yeah, maybe like 35 wins. No, I just, to me, like VanVleet matters, and certainly everybody close to the team, maybe we should put more weight on this, is like, this is a big deal, because he's a defensive pest. He handles the ball. They don't have a lot of those guys. He can shoot it, but like, I don't know, the offense wasn't good with him in the half court last year. Like it's not like, the Rockets had plenty of scoring issues last season with him on the team. So like, unless you're prepared to say that there's like the bottom's going to fall out even more, which I don't really think, because I think you can redistribute some of that stuff to other players. I think you should expect Thompson to be a lot better. Like I don't know, I'm building a straw man, but it's like, you don't get to say Thompson is a potential all NBA player if he can, if a few things happen, like learn how to shoot, and then also say like, oh, this is catastrophic. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm high enough on Shepherd, Thompson, Şengün, Smith all getting better to say that, like, I don't know, at worst, I think the offense will be as good as it was last year without VanVleet. I don't know. I think I get it. Like, this is a team that had like VanVleet's qualities in short supply. I just think in the aggregate, they're going to be as good or better than they were last year, just because of all the young players that are going to be put into bigger roles, and that I believe will improve.
I worry about it less from a regular season perspective, to where I think they can be as good or better than they were last year. But even Fred VanVleet, you mentioned, okay, the offense had struggles with him at points. Okay, but now you're going from Jalen Green to Kevin Durant, and Fred VanVleet was important to making stuff work for Kevin Durant in terms of like his threats, like off the ball, and also just being able to play him alongside Amen Thompson, giving you another, even if you don't consider him a reliable spacer, he's someone who defenses are going to guard from beyond the arc. And removing that from the rotation is, how many of these players on the team are teams going to be worried about guarding from beyond the arc right now? There's KD. I would say they'll be worried about Reed Shepherd, because I think that he's going to be like a future Hall of Famer. But after that, like, and I mean worried, I'm not talking about, oh, look, Jabari Smith like shot 39% on mostly wide open threes. The same thing with DFS. So what do we put it at? 3 guys, let's say. And like, that could be a problem for me when you're looking at their playoff offense. We've seen that like KD isn't going to be able to carry these postseason teams. Like, and he's had few more struggles against double teams. I'm not saying Fred VanVleet was going to be the difference between Kevin Durant getting doubled or not, but what are teams going to do if it's Reed Shepherd and Kevin Durant on the court versus Fred VanVleet and Kevin Durant? It feels like they're going to have easier decisions to make. They're going to zero in on Kevin Durant. So that's my concern. I think the regular season, this team is going to be fine. They're still deep. The defense is going to be harrowing. But now you're so married to, I would say specifically, Şengün needs to be better, more efficient. But like Amen Thompson and Reed Shepherd kind of both need to pop, or Amen Thompson needs to take offensive steps forward and Reed Shepherd needs to pop. Otherwise, I don't know what this team is in the playoffs. It's okay, cool, you got a top 4 Western Conference seed, but you did that last year and you got bounced in the first round. And the other thing too is, even if they get a top, like the margins are always so slim in the West, it feels like, between the top 6 or 7, or at least 2 through 6 or 7, that like I understand why people are saying they don't view them as a title threat anymore, because I look at it and say, yeah, this team could win 60 regular season games still. It wouldn't shock me.
Yeah.
I don't know, without the VanVleet element of their offense, I would need to know what Reed Shepherd looks like, what Amen Thompson looks like before I could even identify a team that I'd feel, a projected playoff team that I'd feel super comfortable with them battling against in the first round.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I mean, like, there's no argument that oh, this is objectively a good thing, that, well, because Shepherd, VanVleet was in his way, or I just think that the drop off, look, again, VanVleet's a small guard. I think this is going to be his age 31 season. So like, and he didn't shoot the ball well last year. You're right. He would get guarded, and that matters maybe more than the 3-point percentage, than the actual number. But I do think that you could expect similar or worse production from him going forward. And I think there's a case to be made that, like, while the Rockets will have these issues with spacing, with half-court offense that they already had, that empowering guys like Thompson and Şengün and Shepherd and Smith and maybe Eason, whoever else, like, there's a scenario where they are better, but in a different way, where it's like they get even more offensive rebounds. They create even more turnovers. You know what I mean? Like, it's not good that VanVleet is hurt. It doesn't make the Rockets better. But I really am not persuaded by the argument that this fundamentally knocks them down a tier. I think that's maybe where I bump on the whole issue, is like, I just think there are ways for them to make up for this.
Well, since you feel that way, and this has to be a trade deadline thing, because they just don't, unless they're going to trade Kevin Durant or Alperen Şengün, like, they don't have players who are making real money to trade. And I don't know let's say they were willing to give up Tari Eason because he's extension eligible and they don't want to pay him. When you look at the money he makes, like, who is the player? Like, are you offering a Tari Eason for like Scottie Pippen Jr. swap? Assuming that works, does that do anything for you? So if you're the Rockets, though, how do you square this away? Are you doing anything at the trade? Well, let me frame it this way: are you more likely as the Rockets to make a trade at the deadline if things are going well, or if they're not going as well as you expected?
I mean, I guess that's kind of related to, like, how long do you intend to be in the Kevin Durant game for? Because if it's like, we're going to extend him, or we're going to keep him around for a couple more years, then if things are going poorly, you probably do double down with the trade to try to, like, make the current version of the team better. If you know what I mean, if that makes sense. But whereas if it's going really well, like, I don't know, maybe you just let it ride. And it's hard to say. I do think, obviously, the injury means that they're going to be more likely deadline players than they were otherwise. But it's just hard to say. Like, I think, to your point, it is difficult to imagine that they're going to be an awesome half-court offense and the shooting is great, before the trade deadline. So just generally, there's going to be maybe some things to address. But, like, as you also said, you're not really flush with the kinds of salaries that you would want to use to upgrade this roster in a short-term way. However, they've got the picks, right? They've got these. They can make, if you can just get to the numbers, and maybe that involves VanVleet, which would be like, that would suck. That would be kind of a shitty look, I think. If he has
an implicit no trade, I think, too.
Well, yeah, it's a 2-year deal and only one. Well, it's a player option. I can never remember if that. Yeah, you're right. One guaranteed year, you have an implicit no trade. I don't know. I assume we'll be talking about them as trade candidates, just because it's kind of an obvious thing. But yeah, I don't know.
What is the? I'm just going to throw a couple names out there, and I'll start here. If you could build picks around Fred VanVleet and get Derek White, is that enough of offensive juice, or is that he's too much of an off-ball guy? But in a way, that's a good.
I'm always trading for Derek White. Like
I figured you would say that.
What the name that that jumped to mind is like a lower level one is like Colin Sexton. Like, the Hornets will be happy to move him for like a second or something and matching salary. Just someone, he's a 40% 3-point shooter. Like, he's not really a point guard, but if what you're looking for is spacing, and like I think Colin Sexton could do that. There's a lot of names at that level. I think they'd be fine.
Yeah, I thought I don't know what I'm just gonna name Celtics, like Peyton Pritchard would be interesting, but I don't know what they want to get off like it's a bad deal to give up Peyton Pritchard. So like that would be, and it's interesting to see like they don't need to go after anyone who's like, no, they need to be the Trae Young team or something.
Right.
That just to me like
LaMelo.
clearly overstates the situation. Yeah, but I don't know like. I'm trying to think of like the name, like the middle of the pack name, because I do think
Kobe White.
Ooh. Then you got to worry about his next deal, though. But maybe that means you're able to get him cheaper. Kobe White would be interesting.
Yeah.
But to your previous point, what does that mean for Reed Shepherd if you're acquiring someone like that? Like Derek White is not supposed to be like running the offense necessarily. So using him as the analog, it's okay. Like Reed Shepherd could play with him. But if you bring in Kobe White, not supposed to run the offense anyway. But I don't envision a lot of Reed Shepherd and Kobe White minutes under Ime Udoka.
No, seems unlikely. But again, if Shepherd is who he's supposed to be, like, I don't know. We might be overblowing this in a big way, right? If Shepherd is who you think he's going to be,
right?
Then this is the
Will
greatest
he be
thing
that
that's ever
off
happened.
rip though? We don't know. So
Well,
now, final 2 questions on this. If you're Kevin Durant, had you had previous knowledge of the Fred VanVleet injury, would you have still wanted to go to the Rockets?
I mean, there's still a lot to recommend the Rockets, even without VanVleet. But we can't pretend like that would have been a factor. Well, I don't know what his alternatives were also. But yeah,
Minnesota.
Like VanVleet being there, I think is definitely a plus, right? Like of course that would have been a factor for Durant.
Well, I was curious what you were going to say because you didn't say that the VanVleet, to be clear, you did not say VanVleet's injury was a good thing, but you said it really doesn't damage their championship equity. And so it comes down to, if you feel that way, like how much a part of Houston's appeal was tied to Fred VanVleet for Kevin Durant.
Again, that's my opinion. Kevin Durant probably has a higher opinion of his importance maybe than I do. Again, I want to say that, like, I don't think it damages their championship equity to the degree that everyone is saying it will. Like, it's just, they're done. They're not, they can't, it's like, I don't know. First of all, were they title contenders like in, capital T, capital C before? Maybe. But it's just like, it doesn't knock them down the level that I think it's being made out to. That's all.
You know who would be such a Rockets player? I can't see the team move. Andrew Nembhard would be such a Rockets player.
Big time.
And the final question I have on this is, if you're the Rockets and you had prior knowledge of the Fred VanVleet injury, are you going and trading for Kevin Durant anyway? Or are you viewing this year as more of what you're talking about, of an extra feeling out process with Amen Thompson, with Reed Shepherd?
That to me is the more interesting question. Doesn't it seem like it would have been very easy for Houston to just say, like, we got a million awesome young players, let's let them cook this year? I think maybe that would have been more on the table.
I do wonder if it would have changed the contents of their package to where would they have wanted to have kept Jalen Green just to have them. So I don't know, but he was so important to matching the salary that but I don't think it would have stopped me because I am so high on all the other players, but it does become sort of a different timeline thing to where it's, hey, like, we're going to compete this year, but like because even if you don't think VanVleet was that important to the championship equity, if Reed Shepherd is who I believe him to be, which we all know that he's going to be, is that going to happen immediately, or is it going to take, he needs this, like, who just comes in? The better bet would be Amen Thompson is just a top 15 NBA player by the end of next season because we have more of a sample size of him.
Or Şengün, for that matter. Like, that's not off the table at all. Like, he's so stupid. Isn't he like 22? Stupidly young still. So, like, or maybe 23. I should know that. There's avenues for the Rockets to be much better that have nothing to do with VanVleet or Durant, honestly.
So let's get to our offseason grades. What did you give them?
I gave him an A. All the transactions were awesome. Like, they made great moves. It just, the VanVleet injury, sort of, as we've just spent time discussing, changes how they look in the aggregate. But, like, find me the move. Maybe Capella, but that's not, like, 3 years, $21 million. I'm not going to let that knock me down from an A.
I went to an A- because I understand why you needed to trade Cam Whitmore, but to only get 2 seconds for him kind of blows. And then also I had some small issues with the roster construction even
Hmm.
before the Fred VanVleet news. So clearly it wasn't weighted heavily because we both finished in that A territory for them. We are on to our next team, which is the Memphis Grizzlies, who hired Tomas Islo officially as their permanent head coach, and then they traded Desmond Bain for Cole Anthony, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, the number 16 pick, which became Jan Hansen, a 2026 first via Orlando, Phoenix, or Washington, a 2028 first, a 2029 first round swap, and a 2030 first. They then traded that number 16 pick, which became Young Handsome, and Orlando's 2028 first, Atlanta's 2027 second, and Sacramento's 2028 second to Portland for number 11, Cedric Coward. So that is, they gave up number 16, a first round pick, and 2 additional seconds to move up 5 spots. They bought out and stretched the final guaranteed year of Cole Anthony's salary. He will now be on the books for $3.7 million through 2027, 2028. They renegotiated and extended Jaren Jackson Jr. His total commitment, including this season, is now 5 years, $240 million. They raised this season's salary by $11.6 million. His actual extension comes out to 4 years, $205 million. There's a player option in the final season, and it will average about 28.8% of the salary cap. They signed Ty Jerome to a 3-year, $27.7 million deal. That was the room exception, and it includes a player option in the final season. They signed Cam Spencer to a 4-year, $10.4 million deal, team option in year 4. They re-signed Santi Aldama to a 3-year, $52.5 million deal. That has a team option as well in the final season. The most important move they made was signing Jock Landale to a 1-year minimum contract. They also drafted Javon Small at number 48. He signed a 2-way, and they traded number 56 to Golden State for number 59, which became Jemai Meshack, along with the rights to Justinian Jessup, who was drafted in 2001. Grant, did you care? And a top 50 protected 2032 second round pick. How's that for a transaction? What? This was one of the harder off seasons for me to make heads or tails of. Where did you land on it?
I think just starting with the Bain trade, we've talked about this plenty. You just say yes, I think, with that many firsts on the table, and Bain not being an all-star and making what he makes. I'm not like leaping at that, but I think ultimately that return is just, it's good enough for a player of Bain's caliber, where you're okay with that. I think the Jackson deal, that's market rates. That's fine. I love getting team options on Aldama and Spencer. And I think just the numbers for Aldama, 3 for 52, I mean, he's going to matter. I like the front court shooting he provides theoretically. Don't know of how I feel about what did you think about the Ty Jerome signing specifically? Cause like you have you have Scottie Pippen Jr. like that. And Jerome, I think didn't do a whole lot to suggest that his great regular season was going to be like viable as a playoff thing. So as like a third guard, I guess, or fourth, maybe if KCP is better than he was in Orlando, which wouldn't be hard. How did you feel about that move specifically?
I thought that was fine. Like
you're into it.
You mentioned it, John Morant. Like you need to get through the regular season so you can get through the playoffs. And so I think that's more. Unless you thought that Cam Spencer really needs to take on more of a role, I think that having Ty Jerome at this number is totally cool.
And I think so you're talking in playoff terms and getting through the regular season. Like we didn't really lay out like what Memphis's intentions were. I think if you're being really critical, the Bain for picks and you believe that Memphis is actually pretty close to being in the contender class, the Bain for picks trade is a bad trade. If that's what you think, if you think that the Grizzlies are in the business of trying to get as good as they can right now, then that trade doesn't make sense. I'm just not convinced. I think this was more of a we need to reevaluate what our core pieces look like and get more flexible, which is fine.
But I think that's fine. But here's the thing: is that you said that you have, or you're implicitly saying you have your 2 faces of the next title contender in John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., who you just paid. Mm-hmm. And then to make that trade with Desmond Bain and not use then turn around and trade 2 of those picks to get someone who's still just a rookie while giving up other assets in the process, it sends a lot of mixed messages here. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some sort of there's like a functional dichotomy to the way that the Grizzlies are existing right now. It's not too timeline-y. I would just argue I don't necessarily know what the timeline is per se. Is like, do they really expect to be near the top of the Western Conference this season? And if not, how do they envision getting there by, I would say 2026 at the latest? Is it via trade? Are you that high on Cedric Howard, who wasn't healthy to play in Summer League? So it's all of their transactions. I think the Bane one is, yeah, that value, okay, take it. But then to have already knifed into those assets the way they did for Cedric Howard, that's it. I'm not saying it's the wrong move. Mm-hmm. It's just an interesting one that seems like it's at odds with what they should be doing at a time when you have John Morant and you just renegotiated and extended Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yeah, I mean, a lot would seem to depend on Coward being a player that really matters, probably sooner than later. Although again, like, to distinguish this from the New Orleans trade, for example, like that Orlando 28 first has nowhere near the upside of what that the pick that Atlanta got in that deal was. So it's like you see these two trades, like, well, why isn't anyone talking about the Grizzlies? Okay, it's a little different in terms of upside. Yeah, I think that's all fair. I mean, do we ding them for not like clearly putting forth like, here's what our goal is? Because at the same time, it's like, well, maybe they were just opportunistic twice. Maybe like the Bane trade was like, yeah, we'll do that. And then they really like Coward, and it's like, yeah, that's worth it. That Orlando pick's going to be 25th. Who cares? We'll give up 16 to move up 5 spots. Like, I don't know. It feels like we're being inconsistent if we don't really hit them for like doing some from column A and some from column B and not having a super clear like vision or plan. But
well,
I don't know.
I'm asking you, what if you can't? You said at the top of this podcast that if we can't discern what their plan is, that's a bad thing. I'm asking you, what is the Grizzlies' plan? What was their goal this offseason?
I don't know. I think I would cop out and say like to be opportunistic, but that doesn't align with like, are we trying to win now? Are we trying to win in 2 years? Are we trying to be good in 5? Like, I don't know. So maybe we do have to hit them for that.
To me, my read is that they were trying to be more flexible moving forward without compromising the product immediately, and that they did recognize what they had in place either wasn't good enough to win a title, which I think we can all agree it wasn't, or that they weren't prepared to reinvest in it and then continue building towards that title. I will ding them for the second one because I think Keith Parrish said this when we did the Grizzlies look ahead. It sucks. Like, remember when the Grizzlies were so young and it's like everyone's waiting for them to get that next guy so that they can contend with these guys. As they get more expensive, those, the Jaren Jackson Jr., John Morant, Desmond Bane, now you have to trade one of them because they didn't pan out. Because what was the swing they ever made alongside the three of them? They didn't.
I mean, they made a lot of bad, like, half swings. We've done the transaction tree of the Marcus Smart of it all and all that stuff. I think the more we talk about it, the more I think maybe the thinking was, we're not good enough with Bane on his number as like a big 3 to justify how inflexible we are salary-wise. So we need to get into a position where we're like the next best thing. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like maybe that was what it sort of came down to. And I think as I'm saying that is a little bit of what maybe we discussed with Keith too. It's just, this wasn't a title contender with Bane. We still love the other two guys in Jackson and Morant as cores. I'm speaking as the Grizzlies now, not necessarily you and me. So maybe we just need to position ourselves to go get the guy that we need in that third spot somehow. And maybe we believe that's Coward, and maybe we believe these picks and some of the more moderate salaries we got are the way we do that. I don't know.
I would say if I had to sum this up in like a word or two, I would just call this offseason non-committal. Which I feel, even though they paid Jaren Jackson Jr. over the long term. And that, by the way, John Morant's extension eligible. He didn't get one. So I don't think that there's a problem in what they're doing. I just don't look at it as this off-season home, like they were brilliant and they were ahead of the 8 ball or anything like that.
Yeah, I would call it non-committal, but I don't want to be tied down to one word, so I won't. C's for us, right? Both of us.
By the way, it feels like we just... I'm sure people will be mad. We kind of just slammed them, and we gave them an average. I don't know what the above-average move was. I guess you could argue I like the Cam Spencer deal. The Bane deal, is that the closest thing to they made an above? And you know how I feel about having to use cap space to pay your own players before they're due. I understand it builds goodwill, but that's also money you could have used to improve the team. So I think that they're going to be good if they're healthy. I don't fully understand what the intention of is for this season. Is where I'm at with them. Do you want to take us through our next team?
Do I? Here we go. All right, the New Orleans Pelicans. We haven't talked about them at all. They fired David Griffin. They replaced David Griffin. Well, I just say they hired Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver to make decisions. Your mileage may vary on who's actually calling the shots there. Hard to say. They traded. This one goes under the radar. They traded Indiana's 26th first back to Indiana for number 23, which became Asa Newell, and the rights to Mojave King, number 47 in 2023. That turned out well for the Pacers. That was before Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles, and now they have the ability to bottom out should they so choose. The Pelicans drafted Jeremiah Fears at number 7. Then they traded number 23, Asa Newell, and a 26th first, most favorable from Indiana or their own, unprotected, to Atlanta for number 13. They drafted Derek Queen, who has had wrist surgery in the interim. They traded Mojave King to Houston. This is the big trade for CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and Chicago's 2027 second to the Wizards for Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey, and number 40, which became Micah Peavy. They signed Peavy to a 4-year deal with a second-round exception. The first 2 years of that deal are guaranteed. Then they signed Kevon Looney to a 2-year, $16 million deal, A+ there. That's an $8 million flat over both seasons. 26-27 is a team option. And then Herb Jones got 3 years and $67.6 million in an extension. So his new total deal, including this coming season, is 5 years, $96.4 million. That extension actually kicks in 26-27. Yeah, Milwaukee and New Orleans.
No. Don't you apologize. I put these together, and this is the second time I made that typo. I apologize to you.
Well, they did make a trade. To clarify, everybody knows this anyway, though. The number 23 and the 26th first is the most favorable of the Bucks and Pelicans to Atlanta for 13. So because I love this trend that you're trying to start, I think everyone needs to do this. On Herb Jones, his average salary is going to be 12.3% of the cap. We need to start using those terms. So, Dan, what do you want to talk about first with the New Orleans Pelicans? What's good here?
What's their redeeming part of their offseason? I think it's the Herb Jones extension.
Sure. That's a great
I'm
number
surprised
for him.
he signed it. I thought he would have waited another year to lock down more money, more years and guaranteed money, because I'm assuming they would have given it to him, but who knows? I mean, their offseason sucks. I don't know who needs to sit here and defend it, but I'll listen to it. What I say isn't gospel, but I feel a little bit better about Jeremiah Fears as a prospect after watching him in Summer League. But I didn't look at him and think, if you thought so highly of Derek Queen that I wanted both Fears and no, I would have just taken Derek Queen over Jeremiah Fears and dealt with not having Fears or dealt with not having Queen. I also it's okay to value Queen a bunch, but it doesn't make any sense if Zion Williamson is still your tentpole, which is the messaging that you're sending out there. And so I think we need to begin, even though we're into this. The question is, Grant, what were they trying to do this offseason?
I guess I would boil it down to they were trying to get their guys. And I think that's just Queen's the guy they just decided they had to have, because otherwise, you just don't make a trade that pulls the safety net out from under you. A year after you just saw injuries drop you to 21 wins, you can't make that trade, full stop, but they did. So you can't make that trade unless Queen is someone you're just we must have this player. And then even that logic is idiotic, because you had the 7th pick too, and you could have taken this guy there and had your unprotected first next year. I just don't understand it. I even trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, I don't know what the argument is justifying that draft night trade. I sort of just can't get there.
No, I can't get there either. And it's just interesting that, they make that trade before they know about the previous one, about the Tyrese Halliburton injury. They were I guess they're punting on the 2026 draft altogether was always their intention.
Which has the guy they must, you can't give up these 26 picks. You can't do it if you're the Pelicans. You're built around Zion, who could fall apart at any time. Your whole team was hurt last year. You know how bad it can get. Giving up draft equity. Sorry, go ahead. You were saying.
No, and by the way, the Jordan Poole trade to me was bad as well. It's where you are with the Pelicans as one of the cheapest, stingiest organizations in maybe all of pro sports, but certainly the NBA. Why are you taking on the extra year of Jordan Poole's salary? Was it just to get back Sadiq Bey so that Troy Weaver could be reunited and feel so good? I understand Jordan Poole has more of the like off the dribble 3 element plus rim finishing than CJ McCollum is going to have, but you also drafted Jeremiah Fears and you have DeJounte Murray coming back at some point. So I don't know honestly, I look at it more through the lens of, I don't know, are you not planning on playing Jeremiah Fears a ton? And it's also, are you not planning on playing Derek Queen a ton once he's healthy either, when you look at the way the front court is populated? This is, to me, it's one of the most incoherent off seasons that I have ever seen. Because I don't understand what the plan is here. And I would be willing to bet a not insubstantial amount of money that they traded away a lottery pick to move up 10 spots in the draft, which is just a no-no.
And I think, and you talked about this on the Pelicans look ahead too. I just don't think anything can happen like from Queen making first team all rookie to Jordan Poole having a great season to you name it. I don't feel like anything can happen here that's going to justify the thinking that went into the decisions in the first place. Like it just, does that make sense? Like from a process versus result standpoint, like it's just insanity, some of these moves they made. So,
it's like you and I said after the Luka Doncic trade, is that the Mavericks could have won the title last year after that and just still have been losers of the trade because of how much meat they left on the bone. And by the way, the other thing we haven't mentioned, but not giving, whether they deserve it, the latitude to make this decision, but not giving Troy Weaver and Joe Dumars the agency to change the head coach when he is headed into the final year of his contract, and so now he has that lame duck status. That is also not a harbinger of an organization that knows what it's doing.
Yep, agree.
So our grades, I would say what, A- across the board?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, you went F-. I respect it. I went F. I just didn't have any A pluses, so I didn't give any F minuses. This is spoiler, I guess. This is the worst offseason in the league. It's not close. So if there were if I gave F minuses.
There's one team that I think could give them a run for their money.
Okay.
I at least
that's a better tease, I guess, at least.
I at least liked the Herb Jones extension, but it just wasn't like that's not enough to redeem everything else.
Nope.
If we're doing regrades a year from now, and what would Derek Queen have needed to do, and the Pelicans need to do for you to even think about, okay, like, is it, because even if they make the playoffs, is that enough for you? It's like, okay, we only sent out like a first round pick in the late teens. I don't.
No, because of the opportunity cost, because of the other paths you could have taken with those assets. It's like I said, like I don't know what could happen. I can't think of anything that could happen that would make me change my opinion about what they did.
Let's round out the Southwest Division with another fairly confusing offseason, or at least it was tough for me to grade, I should say, not confusing. But the San Antonio Spurs signed Mitch Johnson as their permanent head coach. They drafted Dylan Harper at number 2. They drafted Carter Bryant at number 14. They traded number 38, Cam Jones, to Indiana for Sacramento's 2032nd and $2.5 million in cash. They signed De'Aaron Fox to a 4-year, $223.7 million max extension. Kicks in 2026. There are no options, and it will average projected about 31% of the salary cap. They signed Luke Cornett to a 4-year, $40.7 million deal. That is on a declining scale, and it includes a team option on the final season. They traded Blake Wesley, Malachi Branham, and a 2026 second to Washington for Kelly Olynyk. That second-round pick is the least favorable from Dallas, Philly, or Oklahoma City. They signed Jordan McLaughlin to a 1-year minimum deal. They signed our guy, Lindy Waters III, to a 1-year minimum deal. That's $500K guaranteed, so I'm pretty sure he's going to start. And David Jones-Garcia, who was a Summer League favorite for a lot of people, signed a 2-way. I think, Grant, what's interesting about the Spurs offseason is how do you think the draft lottery impacted how they went about their offseason, and what were they trying to do?
How did the draft lottery, just the fact that they wind up getting 2 and 14?
Well, the fact they end up getting 2, because you traded for De'Aaron Fox, now you're drafting Dylan Harper. How do you think that informed how they went about their offseason at all?
I mean, I guess what you're getting at is like, it seems less than ideal that the guy you traded for plays the position of the guy that you drafted and kind of also the position of the guy that just won Rookie of the Year for you. I still don't feel like I think it's still a good thing objectively that they wound up at 2, even if like we're probably going to be talking about the guard glut here. What was the Phoenix one like 1,000 years ago? It's like, oh, they have Isaiah Thomas and Goran Dragic and some third guy who I can't remember.
Eric
Bledsoe. Yeah, shout out Eric Bledsoe. How's this going to work? Like, we'll probably be talking about that for a while. I'd still just like, again, we're not giving them positive grades for lucking into number 2, but like and that's still better than the alternative.
I guess I wasn't saying that having number 2 is potentially a bad thing. I was just wondering that had they not gotten number 2, let's say they'd gotten wherever they were projected to land, would they have been more likely to look at trades to make themselves? Because in my head, I actually think that Dylan Harper having that draft pick, and this is probably the correct response, by the way, sort of forced them to be a little bit more restrained. Now, this is the Spurs. They might have always done that, but I think when you land with a number 2 pick, I feel like it prompted them to be more restrained than they ultimately were going to be had they not landed inside the top 3 or 4 of the draft order.
That's interesting because what I was going to say is based on what they did, which I would describe as measured more or less through for all of their moves this offseason, that maybe that's what they were going to do all along regardless. It's just like, because the alternative is we swing a deal to try to get another player of the like Fox cat level to now. You know, and I don't know if that was ever really in the cards. Hard to know, right? Like it's just we can't know the road not taken. Overall, though, like measured is the word I keep coming back to. Just like yes, you take Harper at 2. Carter, I think we both really like Carter Bryant. If
defensively anyway,
if he can do anything on offense, that's a player. And then like the Cornette deal makes total sense. Great number, team option. You can use him with Wemby. I think that's fine. Or he's the best backup Wemby's had in a while or ever. I say a while, like he's been around for 1,000 years.
Wemby's been in the league for 2 years.
In his storied career. Yeah, so that there's not a lot of fireworks here. I do think we should talk about the Fox deal. No options is good. The 31% of the cap, I'm really like, could they have? Was there some room here? This is probably a situation where the deal was agreed to when they traded for him. But I would have been a lot more positive on their offseason if they'd been able to get this number down just a little bit. Because I don't know. I think Fox is a really good player. It's hard for me to imagine him being the best possible option at number 2, behind Wemby. Are you okay with the deal? No options is nice, I guess.
Yeah, I'm still curious. Like the trade itself, the deal is probably going to be close to fine. I've mentioned this many times, but like I'm viewing like him and Trae Young as sort of these flashbulb moments of, okay, what players will still get potential max contracts. I'm with you in the sense that the deal was probably agreed to when they made the trade. I'm just curious, how much did they like De'Aaron Fox's fit on the roster versus, well, he's not costing us too much and he wants to come here. And that's why it felt like he was sort of a matter of convenience star acquisition rather than one that they actively targeted or maybe even necessarily liked. I think that ultimately he has shown in really only a season or two that like the shooting can get better. But I think having someone who really gets into the teeth of defenses, at least has the mid-range touch, can hit these off the dribble jumpers, will force defenses to guard him in that way. One of the biggest complaints everyone has about Wembanyama is that he's not in the paint enough. And I'm not even talking about they want him to post up. They want him to get more of these easy paint touches and finishes. There was no personnel around him that was going to help him do that. Now you have Fox and Dylan Harper who are going to help you do that. I don't know if like Castle's going to get to that point with the way defenses are going to guard him. But what I would criticize is if you're going to go this route, you need to figure out a way to make sure that the fate of your floor spacing isn't almost exclusively tied to your front court. Because if you look at the floor spacers on this team, it's Wemby. What is it? Luke Cornette now? Like, is he going to be taking threes? And it's
Harrison
after
Barnes.
that, Harrison Barnes. And so, okay, yeah, you have Devin Vassell and our guy Lindy Waters now. Like, what is Dylan Harper going to shoot as a rookie? So I would have liked to have seen them gotten, like, because you have Castle, Harper. I'm assuming there's going to be 3 guard units, like, just to not surround, like, have another wing shooter on this team. feels like a miss here. But I don't. When you look at their transaction sheet, Grant is the only, I guess, move that you could quibble like Kelly Olynyk. That's another. Like they leaned into floor spacing in the front court.
Yeah.
But I guess it would only be the Fox contract though. Is do you think they should have squeezed a little harder? And I think they could have. I just don't know. What's the number that you would have come out of saying, oh, like they got, like, wow, if he would have taken what, $3 million less a season, do you think that makes the deal infinitely more tradable?
That's the reason I can't get I can't get too low at all. I'm not low on this offseason. I think it was pretty good. But like that's what you're talking about, right? Like and it could have saved $3 to $5 million a year maybe or something like that. And maybe as like a tit for tat there, you have to give a player option. That's the only way he takes the lower number, and we wouldn't have loved that. And also, it might have been a, hey, will you take, no, and then conversation over. Like you just, I guess you don't have to extend them. Still, like you're right. Like that's the only one that I would look at and just a little bit of a squint. Like maybe there was more there, but also maybe there wasn't.
Look, they avoided a team option and a trade kicker. It looks like so they didn't come out of it.
Good job, fellas.
Where did you end up giving them?
I gave him a C+. Nothing like spectacular here, but also obviously like there's definitely not a bad move. I don't think so. Slightly above average.
I gave them a B because I think I tend to just be higher on De'Aaron Fox than consensus, and so I don't think they didn't win that negotiation, but I don't think they lost it either. And I actually respect that. They didn't. They were linked to Giannis or all these other like names that people wanted them to target. I like the idea of. I know Wemby's going into year 3, but Castle's only in year 2, and you just got Dylan Harper. Kind of see what you have in this perimeter ball handling core. No, like, oh, by the way, Devin Vassell is still on this team. So I like that they didn't do anything too nuclear after making the Fox trade because I think that could have portended them being more aggressive than they the word you used was measured, and I think that you could have made the argument. They weren't prepared. At least it might have informed or implied that they weren't going to be super measured after getting Fox, and they ultimately ended up doing that. We're on to the Denver Nuggets. I'm excited that I get to read this one. Or is this yours?
I think it's mine.
All right. It's short. Damn it. Damn you.
All right. So they signed David Adelman as the permanent head coach. They traded Michael Porter Jr. and a 2032 first-round pick to the Brooklyn Nets for Cam Johnson. They also traded Dario Saric to the Kings for Jonas Valanciunas. They signed old pal Bruce Brown Jr. to a 1-year minimum, signed Tim Hardaway Jr. to a 1-year minimum, and that's it.
They did not extend Nikola Jokic.
No extension there. Should we freak out now, or do you want to wait until?
I will say, I just don't want to default to this was the only decision he could have made because it makes the most financial sense. Like he could have just simply extended and then been extension eligible again sooner and signed another one. So I've gotten past the idea that, oh yeah, he could lock down more guaranteed years and money next season, but it doesn't, you think Nikola Jokic, like a year difference that the Nuggets are going to feel any differently about? Well, no, he could have just set himself up for the next extension by extending now.
And it's like, did you want them to force him to sign it? Like he probably did. Clearly, do you think they didn't offer it? Like, of course they. You know what I mean?
And I'm not penalizing them for it, but I've seen it framed as like this was the only decision Nikola Jokic. That's the only one that made the most sense. I'm like, no, like he could have just extended and then extended again. Like,
right. Everybody's getting extensions left and right. So yeah, no. This is fairly quick, I guess. Like, I think we should probably focus on the trade.
Well, what were they trying to do, Grant?
I think they're trying to, asset manage, make sure they're set up for like the 2034 season. You have Jokic. There's only one thing to do is just try to
save
win
money by using your 2032 first round.
So let's talk about that because that's so. So my thought on the trade was I think there's a case to be made that Cam Johnson can be a better overall player than Michael Porter Jr. I'm aware of the durability, like misconceptions. Cam Johnson has been less durable. I'm aware of Cam Johnson maybe being overrated defensively. I don't know. I think the element of this that has not been discussed enough is that everybody on the fucking planet looks way better when they play with Nikola Jokic and way worse when they don't. So you don't get to compare what Michael Porter Jr. has done to this point in his career to what Cam Johnson has done because one had Jokic setting him up and the other didn't. So let's just price in some potential upside for Cam Johnson based on the fact that everyone's awesome when they play with him and gets worse when they don't. That's all. But if this was a money-saving thing exclusively and was not tied at all to the other transactions they made, then I have reservations about it, the Porter Jr. trade. because you give up an unprotected first, I can't remember the protections. You give up first. It's the only one.
There's no protections on that thing.
So that's a big deal because your post Jokic years, which that might be the case since he didn't sign an extension, could get ugly. You might want that safety net. Do you think we can separate the trade from the other moves they made? Like, we couldn't have gotten Bruce Brown and Tim Hardaway and Valanciunas if we hadn't made this deal. Well, is that a fair way to look at it?
No, because
I'm not sure.
First of all, no. First, Tim Hardaway. I'm not talking to you right now.
Yeah.
Bruce Brown and Tim Hardaway Jr. signed to minimums.
They could have signed no matter what.
Right.
I'm not talking to you either. I'm just trying to lay out this argument because you do see a lot of, look what they did with the flexibility. It's like, no, they could have gotten those guys anyway.
The Valanciunas trade was just a home run. They could not have made that deal without trimming the money. And just the way that they structured it, you have to give the front office a ton of credit because if they want, they can still tack on. Like, they're not beholden to a certain apron here at the moment. I doubt that they're going to end up let's take on a bunch of cash because of the way they went about the Michael Porter Jr. trade. I have thought a lot about the Cam Johnson fit in Denver, and I've probably come around, and I never thought he would be a bad fit. The question I was asking is giving up your unprotected 2032 pick worth going from Michael Porter Jr. and Dario Saric to Cam Johnson and Jonas Valanciunas? That's kind of just how I was looking at it. Mm-hmm. I still believe as the Nuggets that they didn't squeeze enough juice out of that pick. But I do recognize that there's a chance for me that Cam Johnson ends up being a better fit alongside the Nuggets or alongside Nikola Jokic and just the rest of the Nuggets. I think the stuff he can do offensively is a little bit more intuitive for him, whereas Michael Porter Jr. became more intuitive as time went on, but he just never felt like the quintessential Denver Nuggets Nikola Jokic player. And if the ship had sailed on him being your third option, then okay, I totally understand this. But that 2032 first-round pick, I know we over-romanticize these things, and I know the idea is, no, you do whatever you can to win alongside Nikola Jokic. If you attached it to Michael Porter Jr. or literally any of their other contracts, do you think that there was a move or a player that would have been worth targeting that could have done substantially more for them? And that's the question where I get hung up on, because if I were the Nuggets, there's a chance that I just might not have made. If nothing better was out there, I might have just sat on the 2032 first-round pick. I don't know if that's the right decision, but I don't know that there was also a better move out there. And to me, that's not so they had to make this move. It's if there wasn't a better move out there, maybe you don't make the move. This one's tough. I like the Cam Johnson fit, and I love Jonas Valanciunas just as Jokic's backup big. Look at how good he was. He got traded to the Kings mid-season, and they're the Kings. And he was good. So now you're going to go to Denver. This is tough for me, but I think that ultimately, even if they would have had to wait, you probably could have squeezed more. How do you not get off Zeke Naji as part of giving up your 2032 first round pick? I'm sorry.
I don't think Michael Porter Jr. has a desirable contract. So I think, generally speaking,
you think he has desirable worldviews?
This is the other issue, Dan. I really was going to go there. I think one, you're paying it's a lot to give up an unprotected first to move off a player who has been a starter on a championship team. So by definition, he's done okay, but I don't think that's a desirable contract. I think people are, fair or not, more worried about his health future than they are about Cam Johnson. So that's another factor. The other thing is you don't, as the Nuggets, have to deal with whatever increasingly wild shit Michael Porter Jr. is doing and saying. I think that's actually worth something. And the fact that, I actually, to be fair, I've only read the quotes and not actually heard him say it, but talking at media day about how he's not sure how long he wants to play and so I don't know, man. I think maybe you cut the cord at the right time. And I'm not saying it's worth that 2032 pick. But it might be closer. It might be easier to say this wasn't mostly about the money. I think if you factor in all of the MPJ stuff.
That's a really good point. I don't think it was a bad trade. I think it's one that it's going to be fascinating to look back on this in a year. Do you think, I didn't even let you answer before I continue rambling, does anything spring to mind when you think about, what else could they have done then with the 2032 first round pick?
Well, that's what got me on the whole, I don't think Porter Jr.'s contract is desirable. So I think that, and that had to be the outgoing salary. I think if you were going to do anything consequential.
Well, you could have done something I don't know, Saric and Najee and stepladdered your way there. You're not saving as much money then by that. But this is where I ultimately land. I'm just uncomfortable with how much I think that salary savings went into them trading their 2032 first round pick.
And I completely agree with that. I just we're gonna kick around the like. This is one where it's probably not fair, but we'll do this. If Cam Johnson is way better than MPJ, we'll retroactively be like totally worth it. Smart move. Money was like an ancillary factor.
And it's also, it makes you concerned about what it might augur moving forward to where it's, well, are they going to make another cost-shedding move? Like, what are they going to...
It doesn't tell us anything different about the Nuggets than we've already thought in years past, right? They've always tried to have it both ways. They've always tried to contend with Jokic and also not, like, get totally out of pocket spending-wise. That's just who they are.
This is all to say, does it sound like we're going to give them a bad grade? Because we didn't. We gave them a really good grade.
Yeah, we both of them we got Bs. And
I could be talked into a B+. If you really are if you believe that Cam Johnson is going to be better defensively and is just more of an intuitive fit for this roster. The other thing I didn't mention, I would have liked to have seen them add like some type of secondary ball handler that's not, are we going to rely on Jalen Pickett? Bruce Brown, sure, but even the Bruce Brown of 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I don't know if that would have been the answer. So maybe is Julian Strother going to do that? So I think a B is a really good grade, but you could probably talk me into a B+ if you were really impassioned.
I mean, end of the day, they added 3 rotation players, and 2 of them are on minimums. Like that's important for Denver, which really just needs live bodies that it can trust off the bench.
We are on to the Minnesota Timberwolves, who this is my team because you got the team that had the short transaction log. Tim Connolly Grant opted into the final 2 years of his contract. They drafted Johan Berenger at number 17. They re-signed Naz Reid to a 5-year, $125 million deal. It ascends. He has a player option in the final season, and because this is one where everyone got sticker shock, it's about 14.3% of the salary cap on average. They re-signed Julius Randle for 3 years and $100 million. That's also ascending. He got a player option in the final season. That's an average of about 20.2% of the salary cap. They brought back Joe Ingles on a 1-year minimum. They re-signed Bones Highland to a 1-year minimum deal with only $425K guaranteed. And Grant, they joined in on the 7-team KD trade. They got the rights to Rocco Zikarsky. That was number 45. A 2026 second, less favorable from Denver, Golden State via Phoenix, and then $3.25 million in cash from the Lakers, as well as a 2032 second, the most favorable of Houston and Phoenix via Phoenix, in exchange for what was the number 31 pick. That was Rasheer Fleming, who is currently in Phoenix. What'd you make of this offseason, Grant?
I think this comes down to, do you think Rocco Zikarsky is a cooler sounding name than Rasheer Fleming? Because they're both very cool. I lean Rocco Zikarsky, so they came out ahead in that deal, A+ overall.
And I think, too, like, Rocco is the more versatile name.
Right. A lot of more nickname options, probably. It's just, there's a lot of hard C and K and Z sounds in Rocco Zikarsky. Like, that's a tough... Imagine that over the PA, like when he scores. That sounds good, I think.
Do they play Rocco's Modern Life theme song or something with that?
I've not thought about Rocco's Modern Life for a really long time. Thanks for that. I think one thing, I want to start on the Naz Reid, and what we don't have here, we haven't mentioned, is Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
You were trying to be like super pretentious there.
I'm mourning because we love him, and he's not on this team anymore. It's okay. He landed in a good spot. So a lot of the discussion about this offseason was, you're not going to get back all 3 of Alexander Walker, Reed, and Randall. Which 2 are you picking? How is that going to work out financially? They said, so they get Reed and Randall back. Alexander Walker leaves. It's not easy. You can't really separate the money because I do bump on the money for Reed. It's a lot for even the best backup big in the league. Are you okay with the 2 they wound up with? Yeah,
so I'll start there. I think they made the right decision because Julius Randle is more important to their offense. He's more of an anomaly relative to their roster. And then Naz Reid is just more of a positional anomaly overall relative to the rest of the league than Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I think that's that. Now, they could have just kept paid through the teeth. If you want to say they should have absolutely done that, I'm not going to weep over billionaires spending money. So you could absolutely make that case. what I think with the Reed thing specifically, I do think people overreacted, but you couldn't negotiate a little. Why does he have a player option? Why was this it felt a little bit like they didn't win any aspect of the negotiation, right, which makes it like a C minus contract. I don't think it's a bad contract. I guess my questions lie with, do you think he can ever be your primary five? And if the answer is no, then you probably should have pushed a little harder somewhere.
Yeah, because not just for them, but if you're looking to trade him potentially, other teams are going to have the same issue. Like, so you want us to take on a $125 million deal for a backup? Like, that's because he's not really a 4 either. So like, that's the thing. I guess maybe the simplest way to look at it is the Timberwolves are trying to win a title. They've been in the conference finals twice in a row. They have Anthony Edwards, who could level up a half level and now he's the third best player in the league or something. So you just have to keep Naz Reid because he's a really good player and he makes your team way better. And like to a similar extent, same with Randall. Like, and of the three, I guess Alexander Walker's probably the third best player. The only case I think for keeping Na over Reid is the money one, which we're going to try not to make because who cares, billionaires. But also like, well, you know, we've got Randall, we've got Gobert, we can play McDaniels at the 4 just fine.
Berenger's right there.
Berenger's right there. And on the flip side, we're not really sure Rob Dillingham's ready. I mean, Dante DiVincenzo, I don't know. We like him. I don't know. Mike Conley's 100 years old. He's going to get worse. Like, was the only case you can make, and I'm not making it, it's just for purpose of discussion, is that like we're actually weaker in the guard rotation, and Alexander Walker would be more helpful there than Reid would up front. I'm not super persuaded by that. I bump on the number and the like you said it. Like, what aspect of the Reid deal did you win on as the Timberwolves? Like, I just, surely you could have gotten it a straight 5 years or a lower number with the player option, something like that. Because nobody else, that's the other thing. Where was the competing offers coming from that were going to beat this?
Everyone had the Pistons as sort of looming, and I don't see them as like jumping through the hoops necessary to have spent that money on him. And by the way, they would have had after the Malik Beasley issues. Like, you could argue that like the focus should not have been on the big man rotation anyway.
Right. Yeah.
And the other thing here too is, now if you want to take the flip view and say you really wanted to look at this as a super favorable offseason, would be, okay, like by picking Naz and Julius Randle instead of Na, you ensured that Terrence Shannon Jr. and Rob Dillingham are just going to play a whole bunch. And you need those two to play a whole bunch so you know what you have in them. And it feels it's more important with Rob Dillingham. Like, Terrence Shannon Jr. feels like more of a known quantity, and I think that he'll probably play more than Rob Dillingham will this coming season.
And
but
he's found money too, like relative to Dillingham, who's like, this is an investment. Like,
yes,
pretty significant.
And so
one.
I think it's good. Like, Dante DiVincenzo and Terrence Shannon Jr. and then Mike Conley are all still there. So there's people in front of Rob Dillingham who you might turn to beforehand. But bringing back Na, or having tried to make a bigger swing in the guard rotation on the trade market, that would have eaten into the opportunity for Dillingham. And I don't know if he's going to be good, but like, we need to find out. Like, he's going to be 2 years into his career. So yeah, I'm like kind of ambivalent to this offseason. And by the way, they are too, because they were heavily involved in the Kevin Durant trade sweepstakes. And so that's just, I think you do that if you can, but I don't, like, they clearly feel like they're missing something vital on the offensive end, which is just a weird, uncomfortable spot to be as a team who I think is probably being underrated. That they just made consecutive conference finals. This wasn't a fluke. There's flaws, but they still managed to get to the conference finals anyway.
Yep, they're really, really good. So let's jump to the grades. Like, we both gave them a C, and that's not bad. It's just the acknowledgement of what we went through. It's like the Reid deal. You kept a good player on a good team that needs him, just a little rich. But not like, maybe you just had to do that. There's nothing here, I guess, in other words, that stands out as like egregiously bad or obviously a huge win. So we just kind of split the difference and wind up in the middle. They did fine.
Didn't they do exactly what we expected them to do too? So
that's the other thing is like, yeah, Na was probably gone, and he was. So yeah, right. It very much lined up with expectations.
A team that's yours that you were so low on when we were talking about them prior to hopping on. I do not understand. Grant's like, they still need to prove it to me.
Yeah. Talk to me if you won 2 titles, guys. So just, we're going to run them off here. SGA got a 4-year Supermax. starts in 27-28, got a player option there. It's going to average 36.3% of the cap. Jalen Williams, 5 years, 241. That's a max extension. Can get up to 289 if he makes all NBA. I do think he's got the kind of super max extenders where it's like the number changes whether it's third, second, or first team. So that if he makes third team, I think, or second, it won't get all the way up to 289. That you can condition it on that.
But can we just agree, by the way, that it's also stupid that he needs to make all NBA again for the escalators to kick in?
Yeah, right. He's already proved it. Chet, 5 years, 241, similar. No 30% language at all. Got no options as well. Thomas Sorber drafted at 15, out for the year. Unfortunately, yet another. Also like kind of works out for the Thunder, I guess. Again, like just like Topic last year, gets like a free rookie rehab season. They also traded number 24. That's Nick Clifford to the Kings for the Spurs 27 first with top 16 protection. That turns into a Kings 27 second and a Charlotte 27 second if it is not conveyed. Drafted Brooks Barnhizer at 44. Everybody seems to like him. He's on a two-way. Traded Dylan Jones again and Houston's 29 second to Washington for Colby Jones, who was waived. A couple seemingly minor signings we both really love. AJ Mitchell back, 3 years, $8.7 million, team option on the final year of that. Jalen Williams, other Jalen Williams, 3 years, $24 million, team option on the final year of that. Also signed Brandon Carlson to a two-way deal. Dan, you love this offseason. You gave it 17 pluses after the letter A. Explain yourself.
Look, first of all, the AJ Mitchell contract is actually criminal. That is really highway. Good. That's a heist. Like he's going to be like less than 2% or 3% of the salary cap or whatever it is. That is someone who is, as Case and Wallace gets more expensive, or if you need to move off of Alex Caruso, I'm not saying he's those players, or if you want to even move off of Isaiah Joe, that's just going to enable you to do that and still have someone who could fill those rotation minutes. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest victory for them, in all actuality, was getting Brooks Barnhizer. I don't think we're assigning enough value to how the J-Dub and Chet Holmgren extension shook out. To not get options with those players, I know everyone said that that's now been standardized. Okay, Paolo Banchero got a player option in Orlando. Mm-hmm. Like, these two didn't get player. You don't have the escalator language with Chet Holmgren. And even if J-Dub makes All-NBA, by them not getting to free agency or having new contracts start in 2030, you're saving yourself at minimum $5.6 million per player if they were still max players. Now, if they're super max eligible, you're saving like $15.6 million per player. And yes, that's money you have to spend eventually. Kicking the can down the road when you're at this level, when your core is so young and it's so expensive, I'm not even saying everyone's still going to be here, but like if you have the opportunity to delay $31 million in additional payments for the same players, like you've done yourself a really great service as a team. And so to not get player options on those extensions when you're working with such thin financial margins within the next few years, that's a really, really big deal. And I just don't think it's something that I had like a pin in that I just don't think was talked about enough.
Yeah, no, I think the reason I was too low initially, you did talk me up, I think correctly, was just all three of those extensions for SGA and J-Dub and Chet were like, well, yeah, of course they're going to extend them. But you're right. I think the lack of escalators, the lack of the supermax language or the tweak in it in J-Dub's case is like, that's not a given, like that. And maybe that's the players just being amenable to that. And that's just another thing is the Thunder just kind of seem to get team oriented guys, which I don't know. Maybe we should bump the grade up for that.
They went through the Kevin Durant experience once and never again.
Never again. So yeah, those are wins, even though it's like how big of a win is it if you more or less gave a player the most they could have gotten. I think you do need to think about the options and the lack of supermax language as significant. Really, but I don't know. I kind of still tend to gloss over those. The ones that are really just objectively awesome, and we do probably over romanticize them. Like the smaller deals that are just like heists, like you said, like AJ Mitchell for less than $3 million a year is just like, this guy's going to play this year on a team that's a like overwhelming title favorite, and he's going to help for three. Right. Like that's crazy that they got him for that little. And Jalen Williams too, like he already has played and helped on Mitchell missed time with injury last year, but he was back in the rotation in the playoffs. Same thing with Williams, like $8 million a year. Like that's
and
just,
you have injury issues on the front line. Like Isaiah Hartenstein missed time last year, and Chet Holmgren's now missed major time twice in his 3-year career.
Right. So yeah, I don't know if maybe there wasn't like a robust market for any of those guys down the road, but like those are just great deals. Like those types of deals are how you're able to just be like, we've got our 3 max guys and we're okay with it because you've got all these other movable, cheap, like flexibility inducing deals. So yeah, great offseason, obviously.
I went with an A for them. You went with a B plus. I think you could look at things like, okay, the Dylan Jones whole rigmarole of when are they going to reacquire him based off like the trend of previous events. There's also, I really like Nick Clifford, but there was just no space for him on this team. We don't even know if he would have been, they might have said, oh, the Kings are interested in him. No, we're not going to draft him. That doesn't make any sense.
Right. Red flag.
So like there's, and to your point, I think if you're going to actually give them a lower grade, it's because you think that everything they did, there was just no decision on their part. And with Shea is the example. If their entire offseason was Shea Supermax to where it was, yeah, it's laid out, it's set in stone, then sure, that's a C. But it wasn't. Like they won. It was small victories here and there. But for a team that didn't need to do much and didn't have a ton of flexibility this summer, I was going to give them an F because they didn't try to trade for Giannis, but we'll let it slide.
Wait till next year.
We are on to, this is my team, right? The Portland Trailblazers. Man, a lot of fascinating teams in the Western Conference, especially relative to the East. But they signed Chauncey Billups to a 3-year extension. They traded number 11, which was Cedric Coward, to Memphis. That's a typo on screen. For number 16, which was Jan Hansen. Orlando's 2028 first-round pick, Atlanta's 2027 second-round pick, and Sacramento's 2028 second-round pick. So, again, to move down 5 spots, they got an additional first-round pick, an additional 2 seconds, and got young Handsome, who was the guy that everyone believes they wanted. They bought out DeAndre Ayton. He gave them back about $10 million, and they did not waive and stretch him. They're just eating the $25.6 million remaining this season. They proceeded to trade Anthony Simons to Boston for Drew Holiday, and then they got Damian Lillard back. Vibes. All vibes. Signed him to a 3-year, $41.6 million deal out of the non-tax MLE. The salary actually dips in year 2 before going back up to the same level in year 1 in year 3. So it comes out to about 8.4% of the salary cap. He has a player option on the final season and a full no-trade clause because the years of service to qualify do not need to be consecutive. They signed Blake Wesley to a 1-year minimum deal, and then Grant, the single biggest, most pivotal move, not just for the Blazers this offseason, but the entire league. Portland guaranteed the contract of Duop Reith.
Well, it's tied with Chris Boucher getting that deal with the Celtics, but okay, I guess we'll just pretend like that didn't happen.
Yeah, on the Mount Rushmore of offseason moves, those two are definitely on there.
Yeah. This was a weird offseason.
What were they trying to do?
That's the question, Dan. Because Drew Holiday, he doesn't make a ton of sense here for a couple reasons. Like, he's quite a bit older than their core players. The shooting may dipped and may not be a thing going forward. He's kind of in the way of some of the guys that they might want to be developing, Scoot Henderson particularly. Measured against that, though, and I guess you throw Lillard in there too. It's like that is, like you said, that is just a vibe thing. I love it. But as a basketball move, I don't know. He's not going to play. And then when he is ready to play in year 2, he's kind of a similar situation with Holiday where it's like, you're a little bit in the way. And are you cool clearly accepting a mentor role?
I think what's scary is that they need Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard is probably going to have the highest off-ball gravity on this team, and he's not even going to be attending games.
Yeah,
this year.
They'll just defenders will hang out near the bench and just right. I don't know, I'm not. I got yelled at so many times for leaving this guy. So it is confusing. Do we give them credit for kind of doing something similar last year where it's like, you're giving up the Bub Carrington pick for Avdia, even though we love Avdia, we like Holiday? That doesn't quite fit. Holiday's way older, and the Avdia thing worked out with flying colors. But yep. You know what I mean? They've kind of done this before and gotten good results, so maybe some benefit of the doubt there. It is just a little confusing because you did go real old and you've got this young core, a lot of which contributed to a 23-18 finish down the stretch last year. How worried are you about some of these guys kind of being in the way of players you want to develop? I don't know. I'm not super like concerned about it. It just is like incongruous in some ways. Is that kind of where you're at? It's like the pieces don't quite make sense together as part of a coherent plan.
Yeah, 100. And I think you could question whether leaning into the offensive identity they flashed last year is the right move or rush to kind of read into what happened, just because they still were on the season, I think 27th in points allowed per possession against top 10 offenses.
Okay.
And they had a big chunk of their season. What's encouraging is there was young guys or long-term pieces driving a lot of their performance. But how much do you read into that portion of the season specifically? I think what I have the biggest problem reconciling is that even if this is about leaning into defense or you're not trying to, like, you didn't do anything damaging, it feels like you made it harder to kind of discern what you have in Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson specifically, because the spacing, the shooting on this team is so lacking that I don't think either of those guys are truly set up to succeed. And even though Scoot Henderson got better incrementally, probably a little bit more than that last year, and maybe it's interesting also to have Drew Holiday and Damian Lillard there. What kind of pressure does that put him under? Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? It's not even about obfuscating the value or the playing time for some of these younger players. It's, did you actively hinder what they're going to be able to do during their court time because you took one of the league's clunkiest half-court offenses when you look at the spacing, and you made it worse.
Yeah.
Just by virtue of, Tara and Rose had pointed this out to me on the Blazers look ahead. The way teams were defending Anthony Simons is that you would have thought he was Steph Curry at points last year. And so who do they care about? Like, they'll care about guarding Denny Avdia, but away from the ball, who do they care about guarding?
Yeah, that makes it tough. I think devil's advocate case is like with both Sharpe and Henderson, which are kind of the two guys we're sort of indirectly talking about here being affected negatively.
Well, Rupert as well, but
sure. Are they at the point in their careers where it's like, figure it out, guys? You know, like where it's not like we need to baby them. You know, like, hey, you want spacing? How about you guys do it? You know, like they're maybe far enough along where you can start to be like a little bit more, especially considering where they were drafted, especially considering the talent. This again, devil's advocate, but it's like some element of your spacing needs to come from your guards, and so just like you guys have to provide it. That's going to be an aspect of, if you're going to be the players we hope you are, you got to do some of this. You know, like maybe that's Portland's stance on it.
There's a mental push and pull there for me, because I look at it one way, and I agree with that case, even if it's not one that you would hang your hat on, by saying, yeah, because one of my concerns is one of Scoot or Shaedon Sharpe is probably not going to be a member of the go-to closing unit when you look at the way this roster is made up. Well, starting is I agree, but starting is just like more. Yeah. But then to your point, or your hypothetical point, it's all right, especially Shaedon Sharpe, like, this is year 4, buddy. Like, if we don't think that you can close over Jeremy Grant or Tamani Kamara, Tamani Kamara's fantastic, so that's not fair. But if we want to close with Jeremy Grant or Drew Holiday over you, like, that's more of a you problem than an us problem.
Well, and bigger picture also, I'm really kind of getting into this take. I think I might actually make it seriously. Like,
wait, where are the clouds and the walking stick?
Right. Well, here the thing is, like, as the Blazers, you've got to ask yourself, like, well, how many really good teams that actually do anything have spacing issues from both guards? Like, not a lot. So at least, like, maybe this year's when we find out, like, all right, neither of these guys is going to do it. So guess what? They're not core pieces anymore. You know, like, I don't know, like, you're going to they are, again, far enough, they're far enough in their careers to not just be like babied and like built so carefully around to like make it easy. It's also like they're at a point in their careers where the Blazers need to, I mean, Sharpe's extension eligible now, right? Yeah. Like, so like they're at a point where they need to start making decisions. And if these guys can't space, then shit, like, decision made, I guess, as far as like, are you, real pillars of this whole thing? I don't know.
So this was one of the tougher grades for me to give. I went with a C-. You went with a C+. I think I don't have a problem with anything they did on balance, but you can't take last year's spacing and make it worse. To me, that's just inexcusable.
Yeah, I kind of broke it down a little bit more because I never did land on like what the whole goal was, but like I think the trade with Memphis was a good one. You're getting multiple assets there. I think getting Ayton off the team is a good thing. I think Simons for Holiday is an upgrade. So it just like I like most of their transactions. Nothing blew me away.
I think there's a chance this, and I say this as someone, I did a long segment with it when I did the Blazers look ahead with Tara and Rose. Me and you talked about it. I think Young Handsome is going to be spectacular, but you can't look at that and already like give it an A+ grade. We just don't know. We also don't know. They have Dwight Reed, Robert Williams III, and Donovan Clingan on this team. So that's another guy where it's, well, how much is he going to play?
Yeah.
Our next team, they're your team, right?
I think so.
The Utah Jazz.
Utah Jazz time. Head coach Will Hardy got a 4-year extension. Just like you got to give him something for having to deal with this for this long.
You know who didn't get a 4-year extension?
Who's that?
He's Caucasian and tall. Walker Kessler.
Dan, that could be anyone on the Jazz. They drafted Ace Bailey at number 5. We will discuss that. They traded number 21, Will Riley, number 43, Jameer Watkins, a 2031 second, most favorable of the Pacers and the Heat, and a 2032 second, which is their own, to the Wizards for number 18 to draft Walter Clayton Jr. They traded Colin Sexton and, this isn't a typo, even though it should be, a 2030 second to Charlotte for Yusuf Nurkic. That 2030 second is the most favorable of the Jazz's own and the Clippers, so well, who knows? The Jazz might be good by then, but that's a decent second. They drafted John Tonji at 53. They bought out Jordan Clarkson, much to Dan's delight. Saved $3.6 million, $10.7 million in dead money on this upcoming season's books. Then, in a 3-team deal with involving the Clippers and the Heat, the Jazz traded John Collins to the Clippers for Kyle Anderson and Kevin Love, the Clippers' 27 second, and $2.5 million in cash also from the Clippers. Smaller scale, they traded RJ Lewis Jr. for George Niang, a 27 second. That's the most favorable of Boston and Orlando, and a 2031 second round swap. Then Kenyon Martin, it was good while it lasted. The deal that was always destined to be waived or traded was in fact waived. No more KJ Martin on the Jazz. So Dan, we probably ought to talk about Bailey first, just because that's kind of the most interesting aspect of the offseason, even though picks, even ones that high, don't tend to factor too heavily. But this one feels significant because it was risky, and like we both kind of agreed it was the right risk, I guess.
You needed to make this type of upside swing. And I would have said like Ace Bailey for them would have been the answer at number 4. Just I like Konkanippel, but like if they were not, like you take him at number 4.
Well, I think Konkanippel would have been the answer at 4. But go ahead.
Why would he have been the answer at 4?
Just because he's a great player. Just plays the right way.
So I like this is a pick that I like the risk, but there is a risk. It wasn't just sort of this no-brainer decision. He was trying to get to Washington, who had they were number 6. They took Trey Jones there, right? So we don't know if it's going to pan out, but that's the type of player you need to draft. And then it gets into, I think that bleeds into the rest of their offseason to where there was that joke about Austin Ainge, right? We're not going to tank anymore. And like he wasn't lying. He was also taken out of context, but he wasn't lying where they're going to start sitting guys. They're just not going to have anyone who can drive winning aside from Larry Marketed and Walker Kessler, so they don't need to sit anybody else. I say that tongue in cheek, but like, no, you just wrapped up year 3 of the reset, and like this is what you need to be doing is to get as many high, and it's not even trying to get, you now need to make damn sure you get. And they did that to some extent last season. You've done that to a greater extent this coming season. With all that said, I have 2 points before I throw it back to you. One, I actually think the pick that I would grade out higher just because Ace Bailey was, unless you really thought he wasn't going to report, and I just never bought into that, getting Walter Clayton Jr., I think, is going to end up being a home run for them. That guy's offensive armory is just so deep. All the stuff that he was kind of doing in Summer League, like curling around screens, the gather and escape dribbles, the snaking pick and rolls, getting defenders on his back hip. I really like that pick for them, and they need just more of those. I don't think he's going to be a star, but they need more of those guys who can come in and just give you higher upside than you might think that they have, or just higher upside than, this is like might be our 7th best player one day on a good team. I think he has that. I still, for the life of me, Grant, have no idea what was going on with the Yusuf Nurkic trade. You gave up the better player on the better contract and then attached a 2nd-round pick. Have you come up with any rationalization for the thinking here?
I am officially at the point where it's like there's something we don't know on some side of this deal, because it doesn't make sense. Like Nurkic is not a better player than Sexton in a vacuum. Like The only rationalization I could get to, I guess, if you're like Sexton was in the way of both of Clayton and George and Collier, we got to get him off the roster. Nurkic isn't good enough to be in the way of anybody. That, maybe that's it, and that's worth giving up a second. That's not a good justification.
I've mentioned this, and our audience is probably tired of it. I would respect it more. The conspiracy theory that was floated around is if the Jazz did this to prevent Charlotte from taking Ace Bailey.
Yeah.
And if Colin Sexton in that second is all it took for them not to take Ace Bailey, home run
Great
stuff
trade.
By the Jazz. Great
job.
trade.
Yeah, retract all criticism. No, I think just to throw in my 2 cents on Bailey, wildly risky pick for every reason, not the least of which is maybe he didn't want to be there in the first place, but also it is not a given that this guy's going to be a good NBA player at all based on his college track record. So you're making the upside play. It's the type of thing you do if you're sort of desperate at the end of a 3-year rebuild that has built nothing. So I'm on board. I think it's the right move. The ceiling is there. It might not work. And even if it does, the Jazz are just not in a good spot, young talent wise. To illustrate that, the Clayton pick is one you would normally say, well, the Sexton logic, he's in. What about Collier and George? He's kind of, you can't play them all. And it's well, neither of those two guys did enough to show that they're players you should care about drafting somebody, to play over. So, and that's, I think, kind of the issue with the entire young core of players on this team. So that's neither, I guess that's not super germane to the overall offseason discussion, but it's just, I'm trying to illustrate where Utah is and why the Bailey risk is super worth it. Because just everywhere else, you're I don't know. Filipowski is good on offense, sucks on defense. I don't know what he's going to be on a good team. Taylor Hendricks, Cody Williams, just run down the list. I don't know. Maybe the other thing to talk about, I guess, real quickly before we give him a grade is no extension for Walker Kessler. He's one of 2 with Markkanen, actual starters, NBA level starters on this team. Are you okay with them not extending him? Because there's a pretty straight logic to it.
Yeah, it's optionality. It's either they're going to have more financial flexibility next summer working with his cap hold, or it makes it easier to trade him in the middle of the season. And I think for where the Jazz are at, that's probably the right call. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a huge issue, especially if he's kind of, is there this understanding that if he reaches restricted free agency, they're just going to pay him anyway. It's what the Sixers did with Maxey, except in this case, it feels like there's a chance they might trade Walker Kessler rather than if you're trading for Walker Kessler, you're going to be, in all likelihood, you're going to be planning on paying Walker Kessler. So I'm assuming, not going to have a problem with it. I understand the logic there. If you thought you were close, because there's Walker Kessler is a transformative rim protector, but he's not the difference between you being a playoff team and a bottom feeding team next year. So if you thought that was the difference, I think you ding them for it, but where do you end up with it?
No, I agree with that. I think it's just, I don't know how much better Kessler would have to be for it to be this is a problem that you didn't extend him at your first opportunity. But Maxey is a great comp where it's Maxey was a better player than Kessler, and the Sixers did kind of a similar thing. So he's not in a position to get bent out of shape about it. Yeah. So where did we land grade wise here?
We both C-. Look at that. We're in lockstep. And that's what's weird is because we view Bailey as it was an above average pick for us because there was risk involved. So it has and there's the upside there, but right now they very easily could have been scared out of taking him and weren't. But we talked about the Sexton deal, and just the rest of the offseason was prided around just creating flexibility, got rid of John Collins. You cleared the deck for some of your youngsters, which is, I think that's totally fine. But what about their offseason was A level stuff? I don't know.
Yeah.
Walter Clayton Jr. maybe.
Couldn't get anything for Clarkson, didn't get much for Collins, didn't get anything for Kenny Martin Jr. Maybe there's some opportunities missed there. Just kind of meh.
We're on to the Golden State Warriors, they've had a very theoretical offseason, Grant. So we have listed here the transactions that we think are going to happen once the Jonathan Kuminga situation is settled, which, as of September the 26th at 12:35 Pacific time, 3:35 Eastern time, it has not been. So Warriors are going to sign Al Horford to a 2-year, $11.7 million deal. That'll be the mini MLE. It will presumably have a player option. They will re-sign Gary Payton II to a 1-year minimum deal. They will sign Seth Curry to a 1-year minimum deal. They will sign DeAnthony Melton to a 1-year minimum deal. And they did something in actuality, Grant. They were part of the 7-team Kevin Durant trade.
They traded for Kevin Durant?
Yeah, good. They tried to at one point.
They sure did.
They traded number 41, which was Kobe Brea, for number 52. That was Alex Tui, and number 59, which was Jemai Meshack. And then they traded Meshack, the rights to Justinian Jessup, and a 2032 second, top 50 protected, for Will Richard, who was the number 56 pick. But the big thing here is, look, before getting to Kuminga, I think all the other, air quotes, moves are good. Al Horford, great fit for the Warriors. All those other guys on the minimum, if DeAnthony Melton is healthy, how many times have we said that? Mm-hmm. Excellent. Everything just comes back to the Jonathan Kuminga of it all. Where are you at here?
So the wild thing, yes, it does. Everything does hinge on him, like technically in a very real way, but also like I don't think he's gonna like matter that much for them this season. What matters, I guess, is like, do you get him back on a number that is on a contract that's tradable? Because that's like why. I mean, if you weren't sure that the relationship was done, like the way this has gone in restricted free agency is kind of like your final confirmation. Like there's really no. It's not that there's no coming back from this, but it's like this illustrates the gap between how the Warriors view him and how he views himself. So, like, what matters, I guess, in the Kuminga situation is how many years, how many dollars, what are we talking about between team option, player option, and I guess the nuclear option, which is he takes the qualifying offer. It's hard for me to see, there's not a ton of like daylight between like, well, if they get him for this deal, because we know what all the offers have been too, which is also crazy, is how public all this has been. Like, I guess
agents doing podcasts,
agents, which by the way, great way to signal you've got the negotiating upper hand is to go on a podcast and say like what you're threatening to do. Does not speak to a huge amount of leverage.
Over here at Hardwood Knocks, we prefer it when our agents do not do public appearances and podcasts, which is why you haven't heard our agents on any episodes. Just anyone's episodes. Letting everyone know.
Once we get them. No, so like there's not a ton to talk about because we don't know what the particulars are. I guess. Like, do you think there's a huge gap between like, let's say it's obviously qualifying offer would be a very bad grade for the Warriors. That's a bad result. But of the other options, like if it's the 3-1 with a team option,
that's the middle ground,
75.
right? I actually think I'm surprised he didn't just sign that 3 for 75 with the team. I know that you're then under team control, but you're not gonna be there. And if you are, hasn't something amazing happened?
Right. I think it's just, the option thing. First of all, the Warriors just like wielding these team options like weapons is kind of a boss move, and I do respect it a little bit. Like they're really, really just enjoying the power of restricted free agency, I think, which if you're a smart team, you probably should. The Sixers are another story. The Quentin Grimes offer is laughable. But like, could this just resolve with like a 2+1? Like, and Kuminga gets his player option, the Warriors get him at a number that they can trade him at. Like, I don't know. I don't know where this is gonna land.
I think if he's getting, like, to me, just based off what he's shown as a player, and I know that the fit in Golden State has been imperfect from a sense of they've never really given him enough runway, and we've just seen moments and some protracted pockets of excellent offensive play from him. If you're giving him over like $22 million a year, I don't also want him having the player option to wield over me.
That's very much their stance. And maybe that, like, why can't this just end with 2 years, 45, you waive your implicit no trade? Like, or something, something like in the second year is a player option or something. And I don't know.
The whole implicit no trade with him, he shouldn't, like, if he really wants out of Golden State, the next team that's trading for you is doing so if you have a player option because they want to keep you. Right. So why, and then potentially pay you. So I don't view that as just like maybe they're playing it up because you want to make it look like you're conceding something in these negotiations. But what I want to ask you So we're both in agreement. It's the 3-1 feels like not just the middle ground, but that's how this is going to end up, right? It's probably the 3-1.
It seems fair to me. That's what I'd say.
What would be more surprising to you, that he signs his qualifying offer, or that he ends up taking like the 2-year, $40 million deal with the team option, waives implicit no trade?
I think the qualifying offer would still surprise me most.
Okay.
Just because, like, look, he's clearly confident, and his representation is confident, or at least they're projecting a lot of confidence and have for a long time, and like the kind of player they think he can be.
They're really good at like faking it.
That's a lot of money to leave on the table, right?
Yep.
Like, especially since if you take that qualifying offer, the Warriors are going to be like, I don't know. They're not going to be vindictive about it, but it's like, why are we incentivized to feature you? And from his end, like, I don't know, how motivated is he going to be? So it's just like nobody wins in that hypothetical.
And you know what player I always go back to thinking? Different player, different time. But like, do you remember when Nerlens Noel turned down, what was it, like $470 or something?
Oh, yeah. And signed for the minimum.
Yeah. And so, that would be, if I'm a player, and like that would just be tattooed into my memory, which is probably why it's good that I'm not an agent, because I just be like, yeah, you fucking signed that. Like, what are you doing?
Well, I mean, like, he was a high enough pick that he's made, like, I mean, probably life-changing money. It's not like generational wealth, but if you get like $40 million, then you're talking, right? And you're going to hit free agency again when you're 24, 25. Like, that seems like a good result.
Now, the reporting from Sam Amick of The Athletic ramped up a little bit with the Kings to where they re-engaged with the Warriors. That package, other teams need to be involved. You're probably getting rid of Buddy Hield or Moses Moody as part of it. The Malik Monk, Devin Carter, and a distant first-round pick doesn't do anything for you.
Who do you think let Amick know about that, right? Like, it's clearly coming from Kuminga's side because you need something out there. And maybe some of those were, I'm sure his reporting's legit, but it's just like, come on. Like, in what world is Malik Monk a big enough upgrade over Jonathan Kuminga to justify getting rid of Hield or Moody, both of whom have played real roles?
You would have to think, like, can we get him to a third team for something? I had thought if they were willing to throw in Keon Ellis, and then you're getting Devin Carter and a first-round pick, like that. And I know there was reporting that the protections, the Warriors want like an unprotected pick in 2030. Yeah. Like,
love it.
If it is that, and I'm the Warriors, I mean, you have an unprotected Kings pick, like however many years in the, I
don't know. Like, doesn't matter how far off it is. I think that you definitely think pretty hard about that one. We can't grade this. We can't. It's by definition the Warriors have done nothing unless you count Will Richard, the number 56 pick, as something.
They kept, honestly, that's why he's the photos. They did keep Quentin Post.
Yeah, they did.
So
A+.
yeah. But we just have to note, it took you a while when we were talking about unicorns in the other episode.
I know. Yeah. Well, it's because I view him as, what's more unique than a unicorn? Is like a Pegasus?
A centaur? Pegasus, okay.
An alicorn?
Our next team, moving right along, the Los Angeles Clippers. And just to make it clear, we do not have aspirations to grade anything that has to do with aspiration. So this is not part of it. So they did a bunch of stuff. They drafted Giannis Conan Niederhauser at number 30. They traded number 51, Mohamed Diawara, and number 60, Luke Mitrovic, to the Knicks for number 50, which was Kobe Sanders, who then signed a two-way. They re-signed James Harden to a 2-year, $81.5 million deal. The second season's a player option. If he opts in, though, only $13.3 million of his salary is guaranteed. They re-signed Nicholas Batum to a 2-year, $11.5 million deal. That has a player option in year 2. They signed Brook Lopez to a 2-year, $17.9 million deal. That has a team option on it in the final season, and most of it was from the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. In a 3-team deal with Miami and Utah, they traded Norman Powell, a 2027 second, and $2.5 million in cash for John Collins. They then used the rest of their non-taxpayer mid-level exception to give Bradley Beal a 2-year, $11 million contract, the latter of which is a player option, and they signed Chris Paul at the minimum for 1 year. Grant, what were the Clippers trying to do here?
I mean, acquire a lot of good and helpful veterans and deepen the front. You know, like, they're obviously on a win now timeline because you're built around James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. This team is markedly better, right, on paper. Like, you've got to factor in the age concerns and the health concerns. But a lot of these deals are like, they seem too good to be true. It just kind of makes you wonder, like, are there like, what's the carbon credit situation on the Brook Lopez deal? But like, I guess what I'm struggling with is like, why aren't we giving this the highest grade possible? Because neither of us did. Spoiler, we won't say what happened here, but like, can't you look at the front court depth? Like, John Collins is the first real power forward they've had in forever. Norm Powell, maybe duplicative, trading him at an absolute apex of his value going forward. So positionally, that deal makes sense to me. Brook Lopez as a backup center, like that's even, for 15, 20 minutes max, that's great. Bradley Beal like has really the blooms off the rose there, but like for the portion of the non-tax mid-level, like he's a good player still. So, and he's being paid like a not quite into the bench. You know what I mean? Like there's a ton of just like go down bullet pointed. All these make sense and are good and make the team better in the short term, which is like all the Clippers care about. Can you point me to why neither of us went into the A range here?
So I think for me, I look at it and I do wonder, did they lean when you're looking at what their core lineups will be? You are putting a lot defensively on the shoulders of Ivica Zubac and Kawhi Leonard. Mm-hmm. And now this wouldn't necessarily have not, but like Norman Powell instead of John Collins. John Collins probably helps you out defensively just by virtue of his defensive rebounding there. And what you've now done is you've given your team another ball handler in Bradley Beal while still preserving, like your floor spacing is probably just better because John Collins and Bradley Beal versus Norman Powell, like Norman Powell shot the hell out of the ball for most of last year, but to get spacing from two separate players, one of whom is more of a natural from scratch shot creator, I think is a big deal. There's just more risk. I think that their floor feels like it's high, but we're just going to believe that Bradley Beal is a better fit on this Clippers team than he was for the Suns because why? We're banking on Kawhi Leonard missing time, or you just think that he'll defer more, or you think that Kawhi is going to be more deferential. This team is deep. I think that they can get to a lot of the thing that sways it for me into where you could probably say like maybe they do deserve an A. You get into like their bench, Brook Lopez, Chris Dunn, Derek Jones Jr., they could still get to a lot of those defensive lineups. It's not even just the defense, but how is this team getting out in transition anymore? Right. Not with any of its base units, certainly. Like Bradley Beal, Kawhi Leonard, and James Harden. Like, I just don't, like, Ivica Zubac, John Collins, Brook Lopez is older. Like, he's going to be plodding up and down the floor. So I'm wondering if they can only really operate at one speed. And again, this isn't like, oh, well, they would have been able to be so much better by just keeping Norman Powell and then doing nothing else. Not my point. I just wonder if they gave up some of their functional versatility a little too much. And I mean that in the sense of, yes, they're definitely more versatile on offense overall, but elements of what made the team special, just the exhaustive defense from so many different areas and the ability to really like get out in transition at points. Because again, we did see the transition frequency go up and down. A lot of that could be when Kawhi Leonard is going to come back, like when he came back. But I'm just wondering if this is a team that's just a little too old, going to rely too much on operating with some not so innovative base sets in the half court. So I have some questions there, but from a talent perspective, like they have upgraded the roster considerably.
Yeah. And again, we're like picking nits to justify not giving this an A. Like we both are very high on this offseason. I lean a little bit, you mentioned it, B+ for me, B for you. For me, it's like, I get weird, like vibes of like, I don't know. Remember when like the Rockets ended up with like Scottie Pippen and Charles Barkley, and like it was towards the end, and it's just like there's a lot. You're already like towards the end, clearly, like with Harden and Kawhi. Even though Harden had a very good year for given his age and mileage and stuff last year, you're just kind of doubling down with some of these older guys that have had like, you know, Beal, like who knows what Beal's going to be going. So it's just like the names are awesome. Like there's no doubt about it. It's just like, I'm not sure that it's the best move for a team that's already like defined by fragility of its best players to like have a couple more kind of piled onto that. So like, I actually think the floor is very low because you could have a raft of injuries here, like just across the board. I think that's injuries could happen to any team, but like this one, like, Leonard's not playing half the season. You shouldn't expect Harden to play more than 2/3 of it probably. And then like Lopez is in his late 30s. You just go down the list.
I think you talked me into a B plus though, because I'm just sort of looking at it though, and part of maybe where your concern lies with how short term they are. There's just where is the risk in anything they did, other
Well,
than
that's
in
the
the
thing
short
is
term?
like the counter is like, so what did you want him to go find some like 24-year-olds to eat innings or whatever? Like that's not where this team is. This is kind of an all or nothing situation, right? Like either the old guys stay healthy and perform for another year and you're really really good, or they don't. And so like they were too far in to like pivot to some other crazy plan. So I'm not gonna kill them for doing
Yeah,
what
you
they
talked
did.
me into a B plus, and it was honestly, if you want it, I think you have. You mentioned this before. There is an A argument
Mm-hmm.
here. It's just I don't. I'm still just wondering if they compromise some of what made them special, like overcompensated for some of their flaws. But
Yeah.
and honestly, what's the move that you're most uncomfortable with this offseason? Because I think it's Bradley Beal for me, to where the money doesn't matter, but
Mm-hmm.
because it cost you Norman Powell, and because I just don't know that he's gonna be as easy or valuable of a fit as so many are penciling in, that's where it feels like a lot of the risk lies. Again, even though the contract is just whatever.
Yeah, it's that or it's Collins, because I think Powell had a very good year last year, and then Collins hasn't done anything on a good team for a long time. So we don't like, yes, positionally he makes sense, but like I don't know what's he going to look like in games that count. Like, hard to say. It's been several years.
We are on to, I believe this is my team, right?
No, I'll
Oh,
take
God,
him.
only.
You
Oh,
just did
good.
the Clippers. I don't. You
Oh
don't get
yeah.
to do both LA teams. All right, so they signed Rob Pelinka to a contract extension. JJ Redick, kind of late breaking news, also got a contract extension. And if that seems weird to you, it's because he's only been there for a year and had
If that
already
seems
signed
weird to you,
multi-year
it's because
deal.
it is weird that
That's
you
very
got a contract.
strange, unusual. They are very much committed to him. Not mad at it. I think he did a pretty good job last year. Luka Doncic got a 3-year, $161.8 million max extension. That starts in 26-27. There's a player option on 28-29. He will be eligible to sign for 5 years and $384 million if he opts out, which he will, and he will. The Lakers also traded number 55, Lachlan Ulbrich, and cash to the Bulls for number 45. Our guy, he's going to be our guy forever, Rocco Zikarsky. Zikarsky then traded again with $3 million in cash for number 36. That's Adu Thiero. Thiero signed a 3-year, $5.9 million deal, 27-28 team option. Jake LaRavia, Dan Favale's favorite basketball player on planet Earth, 2 years, $12 million. That's the non-tax mid-level. That's a flat $6 million a year. DeAndre Ayton, following his buyout in Portland, got a 2-year, $16.2 million deal. Got a player option on the second year of that. Marcus Smart, also a buyout guy, 2 years, $10.5 million. That's the biannual exception. He got a player option. Surprisingly, Jackson Hayes re-signed to a 1-year minimum deal. So Dan, also maybe the quiet part loud, LeBron James did not sign anything, picked up his player option, couldn't get another 1+1. So he will be a free agent following this season. I think that covers it. How are we feeling about the Lakers? This is we've said this for like every West team. Kind of complicated, kind of interesting, hard to zero in here.
Right, and you know what? Am I reading too much into the JJ Redick extension by thinking if they did that, they're really playing the longer game here? Because why else would you extend him after 1 year? Because what is the other logical reason for doing that other than to kind of lock him down as you go through what might be a period of turnover around Luka Doncic?
Well, you said the name. I think it's very much related to Luka, which is to say that like it feels like the Lakers want to project like JJ is our guy. Like this is going to be a Popovich situation where no one's ever even going to think about him going anywhere. And so like that kind of felt that way to me, which I think you tie to Luka, which is how they want him to be viewed as a player. But yeah, it still is weird. That's like why are we early extending coaches? I don't understand it.
So I think let's start with the actual, before getting into the LeBron of it all. We've posed this question before, is that to me, I read it as they chose getting two of Jake LaRavia, DeAndre Ayton, and Marcus Smart over getting all three of those guys over getting one of them and Dorian Finney-Smith, basically, or two of them and Dorian Finney-Smith. I think that's a reasonable gambit to make. I think they are placing a lot of stock in a version of DeAndre Ayton that, if we're being honest, it's never actually existed so much as it's come in like fits and bursts. Do you know what I mean? To where it's even his best season of his career, it wasn't, no, that was like 70 games of Dion dominating. No, you never felt that way. The stuff of bailing out at the rim was still there. Some of the defensive inconsistency was still there. Again, for the money, for the short-termness of it all, I think Marcus Smart at the biannual, you could ask, now should we have burned the biannual because now you can't use it next year on Marcus Smart? I think a reasonable enough upside play. I think it was they didn't have necessarily a ton of tools at their disposal. If you hate this offseason, I think it's for one of two reasons, if not both, is that you think that they should have kept Dorian Finney-Smith rather than going the direction they did, or you think that they should have made like some big-time trade, which is just what was out there. What was the trade? Like even if they had enough assets to get Cam Johnson, I'm not sure that's the player that they needed. So you could say, well, they didn't extend Rui, or do you like the way they handled LeBron? That might be the other aspect of all this, is that got very awkward. But if we're being honest, them preserving long-term flexibility is probably the smart move when you look at LeBron's age and the fact that they don't have another co-star in waiting.
Yeah. Maybe I'm holding on a little too long, but I still do kind of like Finney-Smith better than on a winner than honestly like all three of the guys you mentioned. I thought when you were talking about like the holding on to a version of a player that doesn't exist, you were gonna say Marcus Smart, just because he has existed. He has been a great player, but like I kind of feel like we might be past that. And his
do you think Jordan Goodwin is a better defender than Marcus Smart right now?
Probably not, but Marcus.
Oh, I was gonna say he probably might be.
Oh, you think so?
Smart's probably more versatile, but if you want like the dog, yeah. I feel like Jordan Goodwin would be the move.
Is Jordan Goodwin going to steal you like 3 possessions a game with like clever stuff? Because I think Smart can still do that. But yeah, like he's going to have to be a pretty key player, right? Smart on this team, because you don't want Luka and LeBron guarding anybody. Austin Reeves you don't love as your best wing defense. Like he's going to have a role. I'm a little concerned about that. And Ayton, I don't know, there's reasons these guys get bought out, right? Like it's not just financial. It's kind of like, we would like it if you were not around anymore here. So that's gives me pause, I guess, on Ayton, even though the years and dollars are like, yeah, totally great. The only other thing, I've had a few knocks here. Like,
have you liked any of their moves, Grant? Let's start there.
I mean, Laravia, I think that's fine. And like, again, money-wise, I think the Ayton move is like a decent risk-reward proposition, especially given what they had at center. That's something we probably should consider. Like, Jackson Hayes is back on the team, but like, you can't play that guy. I think I've mentioned this to you. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, you're reoriented around Luka. You can't be beholden to LeBron. And I think not offering him another 1+1 is partly the team being like, we want you here, but also like, you're not the central figure anymore. That's like, felt like a little bit of a, implicit message there. Are we sure that the Lakers can treat LeBron this way when there's no guarantee that Luka's next running mate will be better than a 40-year-old LeBron? Like, it might take a while to get that guy. And so like I get it. I understand, like, it's probably right to just kind of say like, this has been great. You got us a title. We cannot feature like in a like figurehead way, a 40-year-old player, but like, it's going to be very hard for them to find someone that's better than LeBron. Like, that just full stop. Like, he's an all NBA player. So you've now put yourself in a position where you maybe need to trade him, and that's not easy to do with the salary and the age, or you lose him for nothing, like, which is kind of, or he retires. Like, I mean, maybe that's it. They just know he's going to do that. And so why pretend with a 1+1? Does that make sense? Like, I think I've said that to you before. Like, I don't know that you can do better.
If LeBron's plan was to retire, why does Rich Paul give that interview or release that statement to Shams Charania at ESPN at the beginning of the offseason? That's what's...
I don't know.
I think maybe I'm overvaluing the flexibility that they still... I know that cap space is overrated now, but like, they've kept themselves, aside from Jared Vanderbilt, they're like free of just bad contracts. Like, everything is tradable if you need to start stacking guys on top of one another to make a bigger move. But I also... I part of me like respects taking the longer view too, but you're right. Like, you're not guaranteed. I never really thought of it that way. You're not guaranteed to get a better running mate for Luka than who LeBron is right now. Right. That running mate could be younger, eventually reach a peak, and it'll never reach age 40, age 41, LeBron James's peak. That's making me rethink my grade on this team too. You might have talked me into a lower Lakers grade, Grant.
And I mean, tied to that is the other thing I keep saying. Like, look, we love the revenge body. Like, Luka did it. But, like, you can't... Like, what's the window for him? Isn't it kind of now? Like, is Luka going to be better? Like, I mean, like, Luka has played about as well as a human being can play basketball. So, like... getting into this, like, maybe their window is much shorter. Maybe they know who they're going to go. Maybe it's Giannis or like whatever. Maybe they know who the next guy is going to be. But you can't really operate on like a 3 or 4 year time horizon with Luka because like there's just no guarantee he's going to be better than he's been in the past. I know I've mentioned that. Like that one really sticks in my head of like, okay, he set the bar super high, like, and maybe he just can't get back there.
Well, I was going to ask you, why do we feel that way about a 26-year-old though?
Because of the conditioning issues and the injuries and the, like.
I get, so I look at it as just like, feels like something about this body transformation feels different. And I think it's the confluence of circumstances of the whole thing that the way the Mavericks unfolded, the reasoning they gave probably lights a fire in him. Them basically fat shaming him and his work ethic on the way out probably resonates. The other thing that I'm painting with a broad brush here, that we probably don't give enough credence to, these guys are so young. And when did you really start like taking care of your body and zeroing in on sleep and nutrition? He has more resources, his body is his job essentially. Like he's 26 now. Like that might be like when it all kind of finally started. Like wasn't that basically when LeBron left Cleveland the first time, and then he goes through that first season in Miami, and it all kind of just clicks? It's like, oh, okay, there's a little bit of a reality check there.
Yeah.
And I also think that now, if he is committed to, and I don't care what a player actually looks like. Like, the aesthetics of it all, we need to get past, like, this ideal
except
body.
Insofar as it reveals, like, what they are and are not doing preparation-wise.
Right, and I think that where people have been concerned about, can he still withstand the physicality of getting into the lane, I look at it as if he's lighter on his feet, I'm assuming that's going to be good news for all these different lower body injuries that he has dealt with. And if the trade-off is a few free throw attempts per game, I'm more than happy to take it. So I'm not saying that we've yet to see the best version of Luka, but this idea that, like, why can't we just assume that Luka is going to be Luka for the next 7 years like we would any other player that's his age and as good as he is?
It's a great unknown. I'm fall somewhere in the middle. Like, I think it's very possible that he wins MVP this year. I also think it's very possible that, like, we've seen the best. It's because the best it's hard to be better than he was. Like, just maybe for that reason more than any other. Like if you're projecting upside or breakouts, it's like you're going to pick the guy that's got 5 all NBA first teams. Like, where is there to go?
But I guess, so my question, what is I guess you would be making the case that they could have operated with more of a sense of urgency, right?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
What were they supposed to do?
That's the thing. Like that you mentioned, like, if you didn't like the offseason, they could make some like crazy trade, like with what? Like, would be the response. So that
because they'll have 3 first-round picks to trade next. And honestly, so we didn't really get into what are they trying to do, because the default should be contend for a title. But I really think that they were trying to remain relevant while setting themselves up for a home run swing next offseason, not with cap space, but maybe via trade. And if that was the goal, they actualized it pretty damn good. Yeah.
Yep. But then the question is that the right goal? Because if you have Doncic and you do think he's going to be this great, you got to go. Like, you can't, there are no gap years. There are no retrenchments. Like, you got to do it.
What was when you said you got to go? Do you remember the theme song? It was the commercial of you got to go right now. That's what you just made me think of. What was that?
I don't know. Probably like an adult diaper company.
I do find your argument about the LeBron thing and Luka's next running mate very compelling. I went with a B+, and I think I'm going to stick with it. I think what they're trying to do, whether it's right, I think we have to wait and see. But if what they were trying to do was remain good, get a little deeper, improve the center position while getting ready and like remaining lean in the sense of these long-term contracts, and so you're built to make a bigger move next summer, I think they actualized it. And the other thing too is not only they get Luka to sign, you could say, well, we were going to offer him whatever extension he wants. He might have just decided, I don't have loyalty to the Lakers. I just got traded. I don't need to sign. The bigger thing is that he recruited DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart. And so, like, this guy is bought in. Yeah. So I'm going to stick with my B+. even I don't. Do I have Lakers exceptionalism? Is that just what happened here?
If it's any consolation, you almost like talked me up from my B minus, and so if I also almost talked you down, I think we're about right.
It's yeah. So that's going to be one that would be interesting to revisit. Our next team, this one is my team. We move on to God, this team is a disaster. The Phoenix Suns. So they had an interesting offseason, Grant. They fired Mike Budenholzer. How long was he there for?
Less than a year.
Yeah, all right. They hired Jordan Ott. No Michigan State ties whatsoever. That's a lie. They signed Devin Booker to a 2-year max extension that made a lot of people angry for some reason. It kicks in 2028, 2029, and includes a player option on the second season. They have guaranteed themselves 1 extra year of Devin Booker. Congratulations to the Phoenix Suns. They traded Kevin Durant to Houston as part of a 17 trade. This is just the cliff. We've gone through this trade like 80 times now for all these different teams. The Phoenix Suns traded Kevin Durant, and they got back in total, for the most part, Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, Kamen Malawach, number 31, which was Rasheer Fleming, number 41, which was Kobe Brea, and a 2026 second-round pick. Brea signed a 2-way. Fleming signed a 4-year, $8.7 million deal with the second-round exception. It has a team option on the final season. They bought out and stretched Bradley Beal. He gave back $13.8 million, which he had to, and I'm sure we'll get into why in a second. They will now have $19.4 million in dead money on their books through 2029, 2030. Congratulations to the Phoenix Suns. They traded number 29, which was Liam McNeely, Vasile Micic, and a 2029 first-round pick, the least favorable of Cleveland, Minnesota, and Utah, to Charlotte for one Mark Williams, and its own 2029 second-round pick back. They signed Colin Gillespie to a 1-year minimum deal, and they signed Nigel Hayes-Davis to a 1-year minimum deal. Grant, where in the actual hell would you like to start with the Phoenix Suns?
I'd like to be finished with them. Is that a
okay? Do you just want to breeze through and get to our what's lower than an F?
I mean, I guess so. Let's maybe the Booker one. Let's start with Booker partly because that's in order, but also because I don't know. That's kind of interesting. Like, what does that say about what the plans are? And maybe the question to ask is Devin Booker a more valuable asset with that extra guaranteed year than he would have been otherwise? Even though they're not going to trade him, if we're just going to view him as well, what would a team be willing to give up more for him with an extra year at whatever $70 million or something on the end of this deal? I don't know. He was on books for a long time either way. So this just felt like, I guess,
hush money, and who cares?
Honestly, I was disappointed. I wasn't mad. I was disappointed
at
because
who? Devin Booker or the Suns?
Yeah, in Booker.
Yeah,
because it's you can't be you need to get out of the business here. What are you seeing that makes you optimistic? Why do you want to be here? And I get it. They offer the money, you take the money, and then you ask for a trade. But
right,
it just why? Why is anyone doing this?
Mike and Sam from the Timeline podcast had talked about this on the Suns Look Ahead, to where I think they said that Booker has said staying with one, he understands why, the meaning of staying with one team, because you look at how you're treated by that next fan base. And or maybe they were making the example of Mikal Bridges with the Knicks. No team is going to love you as much as that first team / fan base.
Yeah.
I think the question we need to ask, though, is I think you can chalk, even if they gave Devin Booker the money to keep him happy, that's okay, whatever. And if you mentioned you're disappointed in Booker, he's still trade eligible at some point this season. If he wants to get out, he could get out. The actual question we need to be asking is, what was the actual goal of this offseason? What did they accomplish here, aside from getting out of the second apron, and now they're kind of a stone's throw away from ducking the tax? Because that's the sticking point. The Kevin Durant trade's interesting because the return feels underwhelming. I don't know if they had options out there. I might have just preferred the one at this point that gave me more flexibility than having to pay Jalen Green. And then how good is Kamen Malawach going to be? The bigger sticking point of their offseason to me was the Bradley Beal, buying him out and waiving him. This wasn't what the Bucks did with Damian Lillard because, one, Damian Lillard wasn't even going to be available to play. And even if you think that Bradley Beal is getting rid of him as addition by subtraction, what did you do after you got rid of Bradley Beal? It wasn't. It was to save money. It wasn't for any other reason other than to save money and maybe improve the vibes.
Right, and for this team more than almost any other, it's very difficult to separate what they did this offseason from what has happened in the previous couple years, because like they're just in these impossible positions of their own making, right? So it's like it's terrible to get this return for Kevin Durant. It's ridiculous to pay Bradley Beal to go away, but it's like you've ruined this team so severely that like this is just the best you could do, I guess. Like, and like I think in a vacuum we'd be like, yeah, you probably do want to save some money because this team's not any good and you don't want to spend what it's going to cost, right? Like a little like quasi Celtics logic.
Don't you think they could have went about getting out of the second apron another way? Like you have Royce O'Neal, you have Grayson Allen. There had to be you could like even if you wanted to get. Here's a question: if you could have just traded Dylan Brooks and gotten out of the apron that way versus paying Bradley Beal for the next half decade, I understand you want him off your team, but like then tell him to take his ball and go home at some point. Because to me, if you put almost $19+ million in dead money on your books for the next half decade, you've now told me that you're not planning on going anywhere special in the next half decade. And the only way you could have convinced me otherwise is had there have been a light at the end of the tunnel, similar to what it was with Milwaukee. And you can even quibble and say, like, that wasn't even enough. But they at least got the perfect fit for their best player in the front court out of a spot that was going to be a complete zero if you were to put him on the basketball court. They wouldn't have had the option with Damian Lillard. The Suns would have had the option to play Bradley Beal. I'm not saying that the returns would have been good. So that's just cheaping out in the biggest potential, like biggest way possible. But the more unnerving thing to me is that it just shows the plan is to do absolutely nothing coherent over the next half decade. I don't understand it.
I mean, they don't have any options. They don't have any picks. They don't have any prospects that, so in some sense, it's like, to really get nihilistic about like nothing they did could have mattered because they're already they're screwed. Like that, however many years you want to say, half decade more, like, right. But that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. Like you still should be trying to make the right moves under the circumstances. The Brooks argument you made is really compelling. Like, there's got to be a way that doesn't involve dead money, upwards of $20 million for several years to get under to say, like there are other ways to do this. I think maybe the simplest way to talk about this is like everything from moving on from a coach in Budenholzer that clearly was the wrong pick from the outset, hiring another Michigan State guy, putting yet another somewhat tied Michigan State guy in charge of personnel that has no experience.
Brian Gregory, yeah.
Brian Gregory is in charge of personnel. Like, it's just evidence of an ownership that is like, this ain't for you, man. Like you've made terrible decisions to this point, and it just continues to be like they're giving the Kings a run for their money in terms of just like capricious. Maybe that's not even fair. It's because it's clearly been more
hot
catastrophic. Dogs. Great, awesome, good.
The games for free. That's a big one. Broadcasting the games for free. That's a big one.
There hasn't been a plan. There isn't a plan, and there doesn't look like there's gonna be a plan. So we can just go to the grades. Like, I don't know what else to say.
A+.
Yeah, good. He's really zagging.
Flat F's
across the board.
Because I do think the timeline guys really gave me the skinny on Nigel Hayes Davis, and like he's 30, so I don't know what to expect from him. But but I'm actually getting to. I think that Common Malawatch can be interesting. Mark Williams is at least on the offensive end. I just don't believe in his defense. I know a lot of people disagree there. That's someone who can be interesting. I like the idea of Kobe Bryant, his shooting, interesting. So I don't hate everything they did, and I don't know how to actually view the Kevin Durant trade is what I struggled with, because is there, like, what is the alternative offer that Minnesota had on the table where because Kevin Durant had a lot of agency over where he's going, and then if you're digging this, are you starting to penalize them for the way they handled it at the trade deadline where they tried to secretly shop him rather than get his input initially and figured out something then? I don't know if that could be part of their offseason grade. So I'm just I'm equivocating on how to judge the Kevin Durant trade. The return on paper is underwhelming. He's 37 and entering the final year of his contract. I don't know how much better were you supposed to do. I guess if you think that Jalen Green's money is that far underwater for the next 3 years, there's definitely a conversation to be had. So that's what I struggled with. That's why they didn't get an F- is my point, is because I don't think that I looked at everything as just a complete and utter failure. And look, Jordan Ott, Michigan State guy, he's at least saying the right things about how they want to play. So maybe there's a change in stylistic preferences, and you're already hearing about Devin Booker and like these other players, like that it's not as depressing as it's been the past 2 years. So like that's a good thing.
Hey, put that on a banner.
Our final team, Grant, your Sacramento
Right.
Kings. Would you like to take us through what they did this offseason?
Absolutely. So they officially hired Doug Christie, who took over for the deposed Mike Brown last season. They also traded the Spurs 2027 first to the Thunder for number 24, Nick Clifford. That pick will turn into the Kings 27 second and Charlotte's 27 second. If it is not conveyed, there's top 16 protection on that. They drafted Maxime Renaud at number 42. He signed a 3-year deal with a second-round exception, a team option on the final year of that. They picked up Keon Ellis' team option. He can now be an unrestricted free agent next summer. Traded Jonas Valanciunas to Denver for Dario Saric. Traded Charlotte's 26th second with top 55 protection, fake second alert, to Detroit for Dennis Schroeder and a 29 second. That's the least favorable of Detroit, Milwaukee, or the Knicks. Schroeder then signed a 3-year, $44.4 million deal. Only $4.4 million of that is guaranteed in 27-28. The Kings also signed Drew Eubanks to a minimum and Doug McDermott to a 1-year minimum. Dan, what'd you like about this offseason for the Kings?
I very much like Nick Clifford.
Great.
I think that was a good bet by the Kings. And the pick they gave up, top 16 protected from the Spurs, that's fine with me for it.
Okay.
After that, I mean, I don't mind Maxime Renaud. Like he's big, he shoots threes, like he's gigantic. So I don't mind that. Everything else, I mean, you know, what is nothing. I mean, Doug Christie. I'm probably indifferent to that. Could they have had more of a coaching hire process though? It seems very much like Vivek decided that Scott Perry was not going to choose his own guy. So.
Mm-hmm.
That never ends well. When does it end? When has that ever ended well?
And the Kings did this for so many cycles where they would swap out an executive and not the coach, and so then you have this situation basically where the head coach is not someone the executive picked, and then maybe they'd change the coach, and then the executive would hire someone, and the executive would get fired, and there's a new guy, and he didn't hire. So you're just kind of getting on the carousel again here. It's a struggle here. Like, just to drill down on it, like the Schroeder deal is okay in a vacuum, I guess, but like the guy's going to be on his 13th team or something like that. And it's just, he's the wrong kind of player for this roster.
Yes.
Valanciunas is a way better player than Dario Saric. Like maybe if the threat was he's just going to leave the NBA, then okay, we'll take something.
But that would have helped them for what they wanted to do by getting Schroeder.
Then you get out of the money. So even that is like hard to defend. And Saric is just kind of cooked, like has been for a while. So I don't care that he makes half of what Valanciunas was making.
You know what the cardinal sin might be? Is the Keon Ellis stuff. You had a chance to make him a restricted free agent, and they've yet to. He is extension eligible still, so they could still sign him to an extension. But like that's the type of player that teams will go after in free agency next summer.
Right, kind of like a universal fit. Not going to need to pay him like a
threes,
star.
Plays well off other ball handlers, defends his ass off.
Like mid-level money is not out of the question for him, and a lot of teams will have that. So yeah, like potential pretty big mistake there. I don't know, and maybe really what we should talk about is like
what was the goal?
Sticking with the core that has just very little upside. Just the Levine, DeRozan, Sabonis core. I mean, not a lot has come of Sabonis's like late season. I'm going to evaluate my situation comments.
Seek clarity.
Seek clarity. Yeah, we see you remember. And so like to not break up that group and bring it all back. Like maybe there just weren't good trade offers. I don't know, but like. It's just really hard to be optimistic about anything here. Well, I don't know what you point to.
I almost can't criticize them for not blowing up because they're not built to. What is the player on this roster that teams are going to trip over themselves to acquire right now? What does blowing it up look like?
Right. I mean, it would have to be we'll take worse money back, like the old school move of like, we're going to make this a 3-year process. We're going to take your bad money with a pick. And that's just never been how the Kings have operated. But like, that's what we would have counseled, right? Like, you know, maybe that's changed now. Like maybe the rebuild process is a little different, but I think that's the move just because you know where this ends. Like the upside is so limited here, especially in the West. You're old, your pieces don't fit. the move clearly, would have been like, just speaking of like all the way down to the initial question of like, what's the goal? I don't know. The goal should have been to start over. And they didn't do that. And so like, I don't know what else to really say. Like yes, we're talking in hypotheticals, like they should have done X, Y, and Z. How feasible would it have been to blow this whole thing up? We know ownership doesn't have an appetite for that. We know the fan base probably would just, in my reading of it, would prefer another pursuit of 38 to 48 wins, which is like 38 is going to be a tall order here.
You're saying the fan base would prefer it? I would argue the opposite.
I think this is maybe anecdotal, but it just really does feel to me like they want a team that's chasing a playoff spot. They want to go to the games and have it be semi-interesting night to night. And just a full-on rebuild does not, to me, seem like what's being called for. In my opinion, often enough.
To correct myself before, Keon Ellis is not extension eligible until February 9th. So
Okay.
edification there. But I don't know. I feels like it would be more split because I feel like maybe the Kings fans that like I interact with would be all for them having any sort of vision, which they don't have right now. It's pretty clear. Mm-hmm. And that would be the question that we're supposed to consider in all this is remove our biases on what they should have done or how we feel about these moves in a vacuum. What was the goal this offseason? What is the plan they're attempting to move forward? And I'll even extend that to by being involved, at least tangentially, in the Jonathan Kuminga quote-unquote sweepstakes. He's young, he's wing-sized. You do not have a lot of any of those players. Like, you have all these guards, and you somehow have, like, no backup bigs, unless we're going Drew Eubanks, or is it Saric, or is Reynaud going to get those minutes here? This is the team I was talking about. If you wanted to make a case that the Pelicans did not have the worst offseason in the NBA, I think the Kings are the team to point to and say, that's the one that gives them a run for their money. And that is when you consider that you have a player as good as Domas Sabonis on the roster and where you just were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And also, like, you just had De'Aaron Fox last summer. That is horrifying to be in this position.
Yeah, they're worse now in the short term because, like, Schroeder could have a career year and not touch the numbers De'Aaron Fox put up in, like, a foot out the door season. Not this, maybe he wouldn't have had a foot out the door, but he did. And they're worse long-term because there just aren't any prospects here. And you've made it harder to keep one of the only guys that has like an interesting future in Keon Ellis by letting him hit unrestricted free agency. So I don't know what the plan was. It seems like status quo-ish. Just even bringing Christie back, I think, is like you had the golden opportunity to not do that when you hired a new executive. So I don't know what the goal is. It seems ridiculously unambitious, and I don't know. I don't have anything good to say, to be honest.
No, what was your least favorite move? So not non-move. I guess picking up Keon Ellis' team option rather than would count. But so
honestly,
what is your least?
Scott Perry, because he's been here before, which is just like ick, right? And did a bunch of ridiculous machinations so they could sign Vince Carter and Zach Randolph and Rajon Rondo, and was gone before that season even ended. And you're like, that's our guy. As the Kings. Like, that's the guy we need to...
It's also funny that you overvalue Zach LaVine in trade talks for De'Aaron Fox and then proceed to hire a guy who's on record as not thinking Zach LaVine is a valuable player to run your basketball operation.
It's just, yeah. I mean, maybe because you got to start kind of at the top. I mean, ownership is the real issue, but like the next step down is the executive.
So they didn't get... What's the nice thing we could say? They didn't get an F minus.
No F minuses.
Flat Fs. And I honestly, this is the one where it's like if you really wanted to talk me out of an F for Phoenix, you can't talk me out of an F for the Pelicans or the Kings. I don't like those are just, I'd probably just be obstinate in my views on them.
I think to the Kings' credit, they didn't give up an unprotected first round pick
yet
in the next draft. Not yet.
Jonathan Kuminga is not signed on the dotted line yet, my friend. There is still time. You have anything else to add, or is that about do it for us?
I think that's going to do it. Were we shorter than the East? Maybe by 10 minutes?
No.
Damn, I'll make this quick then. Thanks, everybody, for listening, for watching. Please remember, rate, review, subscribe. Leave us some comments and give us some good reviews wherever you're listening to this or watching it. That's very, very helpful, and we appreciate it. If you'd like to, at some point coming up, what are we going to do? Some over-under predictions. So we're going to be using Discord to kind of handle that. Links for that are in the YouTube and podcast description.
Check out our. We should try plugging a future show. We're gonna do a live show on Monday night, about 10 p.m. Eastern time, maybe a little after 10 p.m. Eastern time, just reacting to some of the biggest storylines to come out of the first mass media day. We've already had a few training camps open, obviously.
We'll see who's skinny again, because that's apparently that's a new thing.
Who's career low body fat while also putting on 15 pounds of muscle.
It's best shape of your life season. And we're going to try to get there by Monday night, just us two personally. Thanks again, everybody. Shouts Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.